Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb Online and today I'm going to start a new series, What If Naruto Was the Uzumaki Rizzler Part 1. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
He heard a loud explosion be the first thing he heard. The house where he was sleeping shook, and the whole ground trembled horribly. It was sufficient to obliterate his body's perception of sleep. He leapt from his bed and hurried to his room's closet. He hurriedly pulled out a dark black shirt and blue pants after opening the wooden door. On the back of the shirt was a spiral symbol. He quickly fastened his kunai pouch to his thigh and fastened the vest around his body. He tied his headband around his right arm and wrapped his tough flak jacket, which was green, around his chest. He picked up a small, sharp tanto and put it on the strap that was fastened to his back. He was pleased with the image he saw when he stepped in front of the mirror. Naruto Uzumaki is his name. 13 years old, rank, Chunin. 24,401 is the ninja registration number. Uzushiogakure, the hidden whirlpool village, is the affiliation. The young shinobi stood at almost 5 feet 3 inches. His dark red hair was long and silky. His eyes were piercing blue and he was very fair, with a long bang covering one eye. He had well-developed muscles. He was hidden behind a fine black face mask. He walked over to the window and took one last look at his reflection. The apartment was deserted a moment later. The young Chunin's sensory abilities were obviously indicating a fierce battle taking place close to the village's northern edge as he leapt through rooftops at a rapid pace. There were too many fighters involved in combat to count. That could only indicate that another significant hidden village was attacking them. Or a number of them. There was nothing to say for sure. Uzu had chosen to remain neutral in the Third Great Ninja War, which had begun a few months earlier, but it would be pointless to ignore the fact that it was on every ninja village's hit list. Their village was the most technologically advanced. After all, it had more skilled and powerful ninjas than the other major villages, despite being smaller in terms of both population and size. Most importantly, though, they were aware of numerous hidden arts that none of the villages knew about, especially the sealing arts or fuinjutsu. Even after 2 more people joined him, he continued. They quickly caught up to him and began going with him to the battleground. One had dark purple eyes and a short, red-haired body. He wore the Chunin uniform and had fair skin. With pride, he tied the Uzu headband around his forehead. In contrast to Naruto, who was carrying a tanto, this boy was carrying a large scroll on his back, and his hair was nearly covering both of his eyes. He had spent the previous 4 years serving next to this boy, graduated from the academy with him, was assigned to the same genin team, and later became a Chunin alongside him. Nagato Uzumaki was undoubtedly one of his closest and most reliable friends. The other individual was a female. She had light silver hair, which is uncommon in a village like theirs, in contrast to the 2 redhead boys. She had the body of a kunoichi and fair skin. She wore her long, silky hair in a ponytail. Additionally, she had a Chunin vest on, and a unique, field medic insignia was fastened to her left arm. She had a sharp face and a smile that would captivate many young men. However, 13-year-old Akeno Uzumaki was a deadly kunoichi despite her attractive appearance. She had been on the same genin team as Naruto and had graduated with him, just like Nagato. The 3 had previously completed numerous successful missions and had been promoted to Chunin together. Naruto, what's going on? The boy asked, sounding very concerned, even anxious. Clearly irritated and tense, Akeno reprimanded, "We're being attacked, Nagato. This should be clear enough for you." Nagato argued, sounding very perplexed and with a hint of betrayal in his voice. "Why? Our village has absented from participating in the war." Akeno jumped rather forcefully in frustration, cracking one of the rooftops, and said, "I don't know. I just hope Konoha sends aid as soon as possible. There are just too many enemy forces for us to repel, and what troubles me is the fact that they managed to find the location of our village. Nobody in the past 60 years was unable to even get a hint of our location. Focus on the task at hand first. The time for making assumptions will come later." Both of the youthful, quarreling Chunins gazed at their final teammate, the one who had not spoken yet. Even now, they found it very difficult to comprehend that Naruto was, in fact, the son of Kushina Uzumaki. Given the redhead woman's loud and gregarious demeanor, her son was a completely different person. He was amiable, compassionate, and genuinely concerned about his village and its residents, went so far as to refer to each of them as his family. He was also very reserved at the same time. One of their gifted up-and-coming ninjas, Naruto advanced through the ranks quickly thanks to his strength. Naruto was the logical leader of their team, while Akeno was a hothead and Nagato was a shy person. In contrast to his mother, he had the strange ability to maintain his composure under pressure, a quality he might have inherited from his unidentified father. Perhaps the boy's current identity was shaped by the lack of a father figure in his life. Since Kushina had never disclosed Naruto's father's identity, Naruto was immediately shunned in a community that placed a high importance on ancestry. Akeno still recalled how Naruto was teased by his classmates about this fact. At first, the boy was quite upset, but eventually, he stopped caring about the insults. Rather, he made the decision to establish himself as their village's most formidable ninja. An aspiration he continues to pursue today. The young boy's few noteworthy accomplishments included graduating first in his class, completing the most genin missions, many of which were extremely dangerous, and winning their village's Chunin tournament. However, he was well known for another reputation rather than these facts. He was never a prisoner. Naruto abruptly stopped, interrupting their thoughts. Without saying a word, he dropped to his knees and touched the rooftop with one finger. Akeno and Nagato also stopped. Even though they all held the same rank, it was widely acknowledged that Naruto was the team's leader. It was not a clearly defined thing. Naruto said calmly, "I'm sensing several enemy platoons approaching from the east side." However, his friends could tell that he was troubled by this realization just by looking into his eyes and by the years they had spent with him. As Naruto turned to face Nagato, Akeno said, "The Azukage had personally booby-trapped the entire area. I don't think they'll get through. We should focus on the north sector where the real fight is going on." Even though he was gifted, he respected the opinions of his teammates, who were also his closest friends. With a bead of perspiration trickling down his pale face, Nagato said hesitantly, "I think we should check the eastern side, just to be sure." With a question in his piercing blue eyes, Naruto said, "I agree. Akeno?" The girl with the silver hair sighed. Akeno said, "Okay. I'll let the Azukage know, and then we'll go check it out." Naruto gave him a small, appreciative smile. One that she cheerfully gave back with a smile. Akeno bit Nagato's thumb and wrote a coded message while a seal glowed on her right hand. The blood and the mark vanished a moment later, leaving no evidence of their presence. "Done," Nagato declared with assurance. Naruto calmly said, "Nice work. Let's go with D formation," and got two nods from his teammates in agreement. "Let's go." Naruto's expression was one of extreme concern. Akeno and Nagato were clenching their fists tightly next to him, their eyes blazing with rage. They had not anticipated that the enemy forces would be about to breach almost every barrier when they had reached the eastern boundaries of their village. It would be extremely difficult for the enemy to penetrate the Uzumaki defenses, regardless of how good their ninjas were. "It's as I feared," worried Naruto, who refrained from speaking out loud to keep his allies focused. He saw Matsuo Uzumaki standing in front of the sizable Kumo forces directly in front of him, his hands gradually neutralizing the different traps his own village had set. "Now we know why Matsuo never reported back to the village. He was captured by the enemy," bluntly stated Naruto. Nagato said gravely, "We should save him." The boy sounded very determined for once. "I agree. He's one of our own. The enemy has definitely placed him under a genjutsu. Otherwise, he would have never done something like this," passionately replied Akeno. "How should we do this?" Nagato inquired hastily. "Stand down," Naruto gave that order in a painful tone, surprising the two Chunin. They could see he was gritting his teeth even though his face was hidden by his face mask. In his right hand he held a sharp kunai strapped with an explosive tag. "Naruto," Nagato said anxiously. "What are you thinking?" Akeno inquired unsurely. "We can't save him. There are simply too many enemy forces surrounding him, and then there is that man," said Naruto. His fellows looked in the direction he indicated. They went cold. Because the Sandaime Raikage himself was standing behind a number of Kumo soldiers, it was said that the man was the fastest and strongest ninja in their world, and he was a beast. "We may be able to eliminate the ninjas, grab Matsuo, but we would never be able to outrun from the Raikage. All of us could definitely be killed," saddened Naruto. Speaking in a distressed tone, Nagato stated, "But if we don't do something, Matsuo will." Akeno noticed the kunai shaking in Naruto's hand. She could tell what the young boy was going to do because he was taking sharp breaths. Naruto said angrily, "We have to stop Matsuo." Nagato vehemently protested, "What? No, he's our comrade. We can't harm him." The boy appeared astonished by his friend's suggestion. With compassion, Akeno put her hand over the startled boy's arm and said, "There is no choice, Nagato." Nagato continued to speak, "Naruto, we took an oath to protect our comrades," and noticed Naruto averting his piercing gaze. "In the past, many of our shinobi have died for the protection of the village. Neither we or Matsuo are any different," saddened Naruto. Nagato angrily remarked, "No, we can save him, don't give up so easily. Think about the village, Nagato. We cannot rescue Matsuo without getting ourselves killed, and that would just further weaken the village in this desperate hour. Try to understand the situation," asked Naruto. "But," the calm Naruto asked, "do you trust me, Nagato?" "Yes," Naruto asked, "then follow my lead." Nagato turned to face Akeno, who nodded firmly. Even though he still had reservations, he had enough faith in Naruto to act morally. Reluctantly, he agreed, and Naruto smiled in relief. Naruto narrowed his eyes. He threw the kunai a few seconds later. With tremendous speed, the weapon shot through the air and landed a few meters from Matsuo. The explosive tag on the kunai detonated at that precise moment as the Kumo forces went into defensive formations and became vigilant. Boom! The shockwave from the explosion sent Matsuo sailing away, and he thumped slightly in the surrounding bushes. Akeno could feel the man's breath despite the wound. Just utterly unconscious. Both of them gazed at Naruto, who was grinning contentedly. The boy then took an unexpected action. Naruto abruptly emerged from his treetop hiding place to reveal himself to the startled Kumo forces. They received a stern middle finger from the boy. "Worthless jarheads," Naruto challenged. Both Nagato and Akeno gaped at their friend. The next second, Naruto literally grabbed them by the collar and fled. The now enraged enemy troops, who had launched themselves in hot pursuit, let out a number of irate shouts. When the Kumo forces began to be struck by the Azukage's hidden traps, the three Uzu Chunin grinned. It would take a long time for them to make an impression because Matsuo is no longer in operation. They would lose a lot of lives as a result. With a beaming Akeno at his side, Nagato followed Naruto with a proud smile. Even though they failed to save their comrade, they spared his life and gave their village time to plan additional defenses. "You upheld your oath of protecting your comrades in the village at the same time," Naruto smiled at Akeno. The message appeared through a seal on Nagato's arm, and he correctly read it. "Guys, we're being summoned back to the cage tower. Katsuro-sama wants to meet us urgently." Akeno and Naruto nodded quickly to each other. With earnestness, Naruto said, "Orders acknowledged." The war room had a very bleak atmosphere. Along with a few other young Chunin their own age, Naruto, Nagato, and Akeno stood erect in a corner of the room. With their gazes focused on the form of their Azukage, who was presently conducting the situation assessment with the village's top Chunin, they all appeared extremely apprehensive, if not nervous. Although Naruto was not skilled in tactical combat, he could currently see three enormous red pieces encircling his village. Kumo is the first one, then Kiri will definitely be the second. They have always envied us, but who could be the third? Suna is too far to launch such an attack. Konoha wouldn't attack us or risk losing Ka-chan's loyalty, and we all know how important she is to the citizens of the Fire Nation. That would only leave you. I knew Onoki was crazy, but would he really go this far? Worried Naruto. He found it hard to believe that three rival hidden villages that had recently resumed their wars had suddenly banded together to oppose his tiny country. Naruto. Someone's call for him roused him from his agitated reverie. When Akeno pushed him, he realized it was the Azukage himself. Katsuro Uzumaki was a seasoned ninja who was 50 years old. He was close to both Hashirama and Tobarama Senju, and he had experienced the first two major ninja wars. The five Kages even acknowledged the man as a warrior of equal strength due to his skill in Fuinjutsu. When Mito Uzumaki, the first container of the Nine Tails, was nearing the end of her life, he was also the one who assisted in moving the Kyuubi back into Kushina. Naruto moved to kneel in front of his leader. In a grandfatherly tone, Katsuro said, "I assume you understand the situation, Naruto. The enemy forces have us outnumbered and surrounded. But we can defeat them, we are with you. All of us, Katsuro-sama," replied Naruto with assurance. The young teen Chunins nodded proudly as the veteran Kage and his assistant looked around the room. Only the Kage's shoulders were proudly raised as he touched Naruto's shoulder. Katsuro was not shocked when Naruto gave him a defiant look. "This is the will of Uzu, which burns brightly in all of you. I want you all to carry it with you for the rest of their lives," Katsuro said kindly. Every young Chunin nodded gravely as Naruto assured them, "We can fight." Send us to the front line, and we will crush the enemy for the village. I have no doubt about your skills and bravery, but we are heavily outnumbered, and I won't send all younglings to their deaths. It is also our duty to protect the civilians. If I send every fighter to the front, who will protect them if the enemy breaks through? Patiently responded Katsuro. Seeing his leader's dismay, Nagato asked optimistically, what about support from Konoha? Katsuro was reassured when many of his chunin sighed in relief, saying, I have sent word to Kushina a few hours ago. But we are yet to receive response, but I know they shall come to our aid. Naruto, however, gave him a blank stare. The older man smiled slightly as Naruto asked, please tell us the real situation, Katsuro-sama. You were always too observant, Naruto. How bad is it? Akeno inquired anxiously. The cage inhaled sharply. Uzu will fall. The cage admitted. Across the room, shocked gasps were heard, and many of the chunin turned pale in terror. Akeno noticed that Nagato was about to cry and that she was no better. With his eyes calm and determined, Naruto said with confidence, then I'll stay behind with the other veteran ninja. Katsuro-sama, you and the others escape as soon as possible. Nearly all of the other young chunin moved forward and knelt next to Naruto before the touched cage could even say anything. Akeno pledged, we'll try to buy as much time as possible. Nagato was genuinely calm for once when he was asked politely, just get the civilians and our families to safety. Everyone, Katsuro said, shedding a single tear. Uzu is not the bricks or walls of the village, but the people. We may lose our homeland, but as long as our people live on, there can be a future for them. But they will need a leader like you to guide and protect them. We are expendable, and as long as each of us draws breath, we'll fight to give you that future, stated Naruto. The war room fell silent as the astonished Cage and his assistant surveyed all of the chunin. Standing proudly behind Naruto's form, not a single one of them backed away. With kindness, Katsuro put his hands around Naruto's shoulders and said, that's where you're wrong, Naruto. This caused the boy to stand up. The other chunin did the same thing. I don't understand. We're just chunin, our lives are not as valuable as yours. We want to defend our people, replied Naruto. You're talented, Naruto. But you have much to learn, all of you are the best warriors in the elemental nations. But it does not change the fact that the enemy has us outnumbered and surrounded. More than that, there are 3 powerful cages leading the charge. Even all of you combined cannot face one veteran cage. Katsuro briefly clarified the matter, causing many teenagers to. Naruto objected, but the children are the future of any civilization. If I let our children sacrifice themselves, then I will be betraying our entire family and will never be able to face my ancestors, much less forgive myself. I am proud to have soldiers like you, and it gives me hope for the future. I want you all to divide yourselves into small teams. Each team shall take a small contingent of civilians with them. Old men, women, and children. You will take different routes and lead our people into Fire Nation. I've sent word to the Hokage. You all will be given shelter in Konoha, explained Katsuro, and observed a sense of calm disappearing the teenagers' faces. Are they trustworthy? Skeptically asked Naruto. Hiruzen Sarutobi is someone I know. He is a good man, even though we don't agree. When the situation is settled and I am still alive, we will consider reclaiming our lost territory. Kushina will assist our people in settling down. Until then, we have to do everything in our power to protect our people, Katsuro stated gravely. The old Cage laughed affectionately as Naruto obstinately said, I won't abandon you. The Azukage smiled reassuringly at Naruto and put a firm hand on his shoulder. Son, have some faith in me. The others laughed, but Naruto remained stoic. Besides, if I let you participate in such a suicidal battle which is still beyond your league, Kushina will kill me, Katsuro said kindly. As a shinobi, I am old enough to decide for myself. Please, let me fight with you, Naruto begged. Oh, the classic disobedient teenager. What fascinating lives they lead, Katsuro remarked pleasantly. Naruto, try to view the situation logically rather than emotionally. Think of this as an order from your cage, and I'm sure you'll understand if that's not sufficient. At all costs, protect the civilians and get them to Konoha, Katsuro stated sternly. Katsuro just grinned, but Naruto's fists clenched tightly as he glared at his leader, much to the surprise of his fellow chunin. I can't run away like this, Naruto uttered an ugly voice. Naruto, you're not fleeing. To protect the civilians, you are merely strategically retreating. Once things are under control, we will return the battle to the enemy. Son, don't be so ready to die. Your time will come. You're still young, Katsuro patiently suggested. I kneel. Naruto blinked. The others did the same. In any case, they promptly knelt before their leader and followed his instructions. His bright red hair was still blowing in the air, and the old cage's wrinkled face was still shining brightly. The old man pulled out his sword and laid it on Naruto's shoulder, his heavy frame towering over them. Be without fear in the face of your enemies. Be brave and kind, so that our ancestors may love you. Strive for truth and peace, even if it leads to your end. Safeguard the helpless and oppose the wicked, that is your oath. Slap. Naruto looked at the old cage in shock as he gave him a hard slap on the cheek that left a bright red mark. The cage grinned. And that is so you remember it, Katsuro responded, laughing. Naruto was gradually forced to stand by the elderly man, and the other Chunin did the same. Rise a guardian, Katsuro concluded with pride. When every Chunin gave him a stern, committed salute, he grinned. Even as a single tear fell from the boy's eyes, Naruto joined in. After a curious Nagato received a scroll from one of the cage's assistants, the Chunins soon began to rush out of the room to complete their task. When the Azukage's voice interrupted them, Naruto, Nagato, and Akeno also began to run in the direction of the exit. To their surprise, the cage gave them a sharp salute as they turned around. With pride, Katsuro said, I leave the Uzumaki to you. Protect them. The three children turned to face their courageous cage in return, staring him in the eye. We will. Naruto gazed at his beloved village's burning shape and the hundreds of enemy fighters flooding into his house. Nagato was crying next to him, and Akeno and several other Chunin were clenching their fists, their eyes blazing with rage and sorrow. Tears threatened to fall from his eyes, but he blinked them away. He turned to his ninjas and the nearly 250 civilians they were tasked with protecting and transporting to Konoha after taking a deep breath and recalling his oath to Katsuro. Many of them were in tears, a few were shaking with anxiety and fear, and some were simply sitting there, defeated, waiting to die. They were all taken aback when Naruto appeared, his youthful, resolute eyes looking directly into their defeated stares. You all think we're the unlucky ones, don't you? We have lost our home, our leader, our families. Limited supplies, limited people, and stranded deep inside enemy lines. Maybe it would have been better for us to die quickly, beside our warriors and our Azukage instead of dying out here slowly. Where shall we go? What shall we do? Shouted Naruto. Nagato recoiled when he saw how much more depressed the civilians and even their few ninjas were getting, while Akeno gasped in horror at what Naruto was saying. Our ancestors established our Uzumaki clan centuries ago, like us. They were attacked and had their homes taken away, but they persisted and never gave up hope, giving us our future through their sacrifice. Please look around you, at your children, and at the person next to you. If you wish to die, I will be happy to accompany you back towards the enemy forces so that we can both die honorably. On the memory of our ancestors, our beloved cage, our martyred friends, and our families, I, Naruto Uzumaki, pledge to find us a new home. Or we can continue to fight. We can demonstrate to our enemies that we are not defeated, that the Uzumaki can never be defeated as long as even one of us remains. Naruto. The young Chunin walked between his people, looking them in the eye. The journey won't be easy. We shall face many hardships, but we will rebuild our home, our family. We will not give up, proudly declared Naruto. The boy saluted his people sharply and stood at attention. So say we all. Akeno and Nagato saluted their people, stepped up to Naruto, and stood shoulder to shoulder with their friend. So say we all. One by one, the other ninjas gathered around Naruto and shouted in proud, resolute tones. Additionally, the civilians stood up again and gazed proudly at their new leader. So say we all. So say we all. So say we all. So say we all. The chronicles of Uzumaki had only just begun. Akeno perched on a tall tree's branch. She stared between her group of civilians and the few surviving Uzu ninjas and the perimeter they had established. It was getting close to evening, and their people appeared to be unwinding. The last few days had been very difficult, so she couldn't really blame them, even vicious. The enemy forces were determined to kill every last Uzumaki who resisted, so leaving Uzu had not been simple. The only outcome for those who chose to surrender would be slavery. Their group had experienced a lot of hardship. The most obvious ones were fatigue, lack of food, water, and sleep. She was shocked to learn that Naruto had assumed leadership of their group. However, since none of the other ninjas were willing to take the initiative, he wasn't really in a position to do anything about it. However, that choice proved to be the right one. The only reason the civilians haven't panicked and done something crazy thus far is Naruto's cool-headedness. But she was aware that her friend was thinking about something. She came to a troubling conclusion because of the way his brows were raised, the way he listened to anything about Konoha with cynicism, and his unwavering alertness even after they all entered Fire Nation. Naruto had no faith in Konoha. She was also baffled as to why. When a fellow Chunin named Noda tapped her shoulder, she snapped out of her reverie. They both nodded firmly, and as Akino's guard shift came to an end, a small smile appeared on her lips. She leapt from the tall tree and strode in the direction of the sole individual who could respond to the foolish query that was bothering her. When she noticed Nagato and Naruto standing there, she arched an eyebrow. As they looked at the map on the ground in front of them, the boys appeared to be debating something. I want you to set up barriers here, here and here. Traps should be set in every direction, and I want 4 scouts to patrol the perimeter for shifts of 2 hours each. Then the next group will take watch. Can you make that happen, Nagato? Serious question to Naruto. Nagato hesitated before responding, yeah, I can. But, don't you think you're being overly cautious? As Akeno arrived next to her 2 allies, she remarked, he's right. We've shaken off the enemy forces in pursuit and now we are in Fire Nation's borders. We're safe for the moment. Don't be naive, Akeno. We'll never be safe. Naruto sternly remarked, gazing into her icy eyes. The Uzukage said that he has already sent word to the Hokage. We have, said Nagato. Naruto made his 2 friends wince when he said, Katsuro-sama is dead, and dead men have no rights. Naruto sighed as Nagato hesitantly said, how can you say that? He could still be alive. You are free to believe what you want, Nagato, but it doesn't change reality, and deep down you know it, replied Naruto sternly. When Akeno moved in front of Nagato, he stopped him in his tracks. She put her hand on Nagato's chest and shook her head, but Naruto did not respond. Nagato sighed in frustration and turned to leave his 2 friends alone. Naruto returned his attention to the map and said, he better follow the instructions I gave him, or we'll all end up dead. Anko, struggling to find the right words as Naruto gazed at her, said, you know he will. Naruto, you don't have to be so hard on him. Nagato is just. Naruto retorted, he still believes in something. A luxury I can't afford. Akeno saw Naruto's dark spots under his eyes and the way his eyes occasionally blinked slowly for the first time. Akeno put her hand on Naruto's cheek and inquired anxiously, when did you sleep last? I'll sleep when I'm dead. Akeno snarled. She grabbed him by the shirt collar and slammed him into a nearby tree. Her eyes met his astonished ones with anger. She saw it all in his eyes, and they remained that way for a long time without saying anything. They're all dead. Naruto muttered. The next second she put her arms around him. Even though her tears had long since stopped, the sadness in her heart would never go away. Akeno was aware that the boy in her arms experienced the same emotion. He reluctantly gave her a hug in return, which relieved her. Calmingly, Akeno said, we'll make it through this. All of us, I promise. She smiled when Naruto admitted, I never asked to be leader. I don't know how can I keep everyone safe. You got us this far without losing anyone. I'd say that's a pretty good start, and more than anything the rest of us could have done in your situation, said Akeno with pride. Leaning back, Naruto met the girl with the silver hair directly. Speaking softly, he put his hands on her cheeks and spoke. With hesitation, Naruto uttered, we shouldn't go to Konoha. Why? Akeno asked calmly. As she stroked his cheek, Naruto said, I can't give you a solid reason. I've got this feeling in my gut, please Akeno. You have to trust me. I do trust you. But where can we go if not Konoha? Anywhere but there. Akeno grinned. Naruto turned away as the silver-haired girl said, it's about her, isn't it? There is that too. But this is not just about her, we can't trust Konoha. Where the hell were they when our village was attacked? Why didn't they send help when we called? Why did Kushina ignore our SOS? The answer is simple, they didn't bother, bluntly stated Naruto. As Naruto laughed, Akeno argued, you don't know that, and your mother will never abandon you to die. Like she didn't abandon me my entire life. Akeno winced. Whatever she said would never alter the reality that Naruto was raised as an orphan in spite of having parents. A young Kushina had left her baby son in Uzu, according to the story she had heard. Naruto was cared for by the Uzukage, and the villagers were particularly friendly with him. From the beginning, he had been by himself. Kushina would occasionally send letters, to which Naruto initially responded. But he simply stopped when he realized his mother would never come see him. He went his own way after that, He became a strong fighter, a ninja, and learned everything on his own. But by doing all of that, he was able to stop losing his attachment to people. Since it was a mission and he had some concern for their remaining clan members, he still wanted to keep them safe. However, he only knew a few of them. Fortunately for Naruto, she was one of the few people he trusted. But since Kushina might not even be his mother, he didn't trust a mother who was never there. Moreover, he would never trust Konoha again. The nation that undoubtedly abandoned Uzu when he most needed them, the village that took his mother away, and the village that was at least partially to blame for his chaotic life. However, there was nowhere else for them to go. And she came to a realization. Akeno smiled slightly as he asked knowingly, "You're not coming to Konoha, are you?" "You know me." Naruto shrugged in response. "Naruto. I'll get the civilians to Konoha and complete my mission, then I'll leave," said Naruto. "And go where?" Akeno inquired impatiently. "Anywhere but Konoha. The world is a large place, I'm sure I'll find my spot," said Naruto with a smile. Akeno argued, "There's a world war going on, Naruto," and was taken aback by his resolute gaze. "I am a loyal ninja of Uzumaki. I would rather die than swear my loyalty to any other village, not even Konoha. And I have my own goal," Naruto confidently stated. "What is that?" Naruto declared with pride, "I want to recreate Uzu." Akeno gasped. Before the shinobi nations were established, the entire Uzumaki clan had to work together to build their village, and now, only a few hundred of them remained, with only 50 of them being ninjas. How could he have even dreamed of something so unattainable? "It's impossible," Akeno exclaimed incredulously. Naruto obstinately retorted, "So you say, but I will prove you wrong." Akeno sadly remarked, "There can be no peace in this war-torn world, Naruto," and backed off when she noticed a dangerous fire blazing in his eyes. The resolve in Naruto's eyes also captivated Nagato, who had been listening to the conversation in silence from his hiding place behind a tree. "To stop this fighting, I'll become the god of this world." Naruto picked up his tanto and began to leave after saying those words. "Nagato, stop hiding. Grieving and crying won't change anything. The only thing we need to accomplish our desires is power," harshly replied Naruto. Akeno was taken aback. When Nagato came out of his hiding place and hurried to join Naruto, she was unable to even speak. The two boys turned to face their female teammate after exchanging firm nods. "Can you keep things under control until we return?" Naruto asked gravely. "We're going to scout the eastern route." Nagato received a nod in response to his statement. "Nakamura and Todo's groups were going to meet us there. We'll check if they're there or not." "All right. Be careful you two." All she got in return were two arrogant smirks. For the last 30 minutes, Nagato had been silently following his friend. As they hopped from tree to tree, the only sound they made was the occasional thunk as their feet made contact with the branches. They had not spoken to one another. The majority of Konoha's shinobi were on the front lines because the country had also joined the Third Great Ninja War. Fortunately, it limited the Uzumaki's range of motion, at least in Naruto's opinion. Nagato asked, forcing his masked companion to turn around, "Did you really mean it?" "Yes." Nagato grinned. Answering questions like these with the fewest possible words was typical of Naruto. Nagato inquired inquisitively, "How will you bring peace for all of us which Katsuro-sama wanted?" "I don't know how as of yet, Nagato. But I believe that if I give it my all then it can be achieved. I just have to believe in it." "What about you?" asked Naruto. "You're my best friend, Naruto. We've had each other's backs for as long as I remember. If you believe that going to Konoha is not the right choice, then I'll follow you wherever you go." Nagato smiled happily. Naruto asked inquisitively, "Just like that?" which caused Nagato to smile cheekily at him. Nagato's friend grinned slightly as he deadpanned, "I'm the only one who can keep up with your stick-up-your-ass attitude." "Ass?" Knowing that comment was made with affection, Nagato grinned when he heard it. He heard something that Naruto hardly ever said to anyone as they traveled on. "I'm lucky to have friends like you." As Nagato moved to stand next to Naruto, a broad smile appeared on his face. Knowing how valuable each other was to them, they continued their journey in silence without saying another word. They had been on the same team, fought for the same country, saved each other's lives, supported one another during difficult times, argued about trivial matters, and experienced the same suffering. But when the boy sensed something unsettling, the smile vanished from his face. He activated the seal on his arm frantically, and was startled when he received no response. Nagato was cautioned, "Naruto." "I know." Naruto snapped back. The two of them frantically ran in the direction of the meeting spot, where they were to meet the other two groups of survivors who had managed to escape from Uzu. Nagato froze in place, a startled gasp escaping from his lips as his eyes widened. No, no, no. Naruto repeated in a terrified tone, losing all of the composure he had so far been able to maintain. They both gazed at their nearly 400 clansmen's bodies in agony. There were bodies all over the Uzumaki camp, which was completely on fire. The intense fighting had destroyed the trees and bushes, turning the once green grass blood red. There were weapons all over the place, some still in the hands of their previous owners. Nagato trailed behind Naruto as he hurried to the right. They discovered Nakamura, who was gasping for air, together. As Nagato pulled out his pouch and his friend bent down to hold the wounded young Chunin in his arms, Naruto hurriedly said, "Nagato, first aid. Save it. Naruto, it's too late for me." Nakamura coughed up blood in response. Although Naruto was not a medic, he attempted to stop the blood flow from the rather large hole in his comrade's stomach. Additionally, his comrade was too severely hurt to be saved. Sadly, Nagato knelt down and took the dying 12-year-old's arm, asking, "Who did this?" "I don't know. They suddenly ambushed us. It was chaos. They were too fast. We couldn't see them," said Nakamura. Naruto angrily questioned, "They killed everyone?" "Almost. Naruto. They took the children. I couldn't save them. I'm so." When the wounded boy fell in Naruto's arms, his eyes permanently closing, Naruto gasped. Nagato assisted in returning the dead boy's sword to his hands and gently laying the body respectfully back towards the ground. He watched as Naruto wiped away his tears quickly, but the pain and rage seemed to be growing stronger by the moment. Nagato had only one thought as he surveyed his slaughtered people. Nagato thought sorrowfully, to come this far only to. Naruto said in agony, "Nagato, we need to go." Nagato saw the remorse in his friend's eyes and said, "We should bury them, Naruto. There is nothing more we can do for them right now, but we do need to protect our group. Let's go," said Naruto. Nagato quickly stood up and realized what had happened. They both began running back to their own group to alert their remaining allies. The ones who were now the world's last remaining Uzumaki. Naruto stopped. His heart was pounding frantically, his hands and legs were trembling, and his eyes were darting around. Nagato had fallen to his knees beside him and was sobbing uncontrollably. Because another massacre was in front of them. Older people, women, and men all killed. Their own people had suffered the same destruction that had befallen the earlier Uzumaki groups. Every Uzu ninja had been mercilessly wiped out by a systematic attack. Furthermore, Akeno was nowhere to be seen, as well as the kids in their camp. Deflecting a barrage of sharp kunai that would have killed him and Nagato, Naruto swiftly pulled out his tanto. Behind Naruto's back, his final companion swiftly moved into position, his eyes now keenly examining their surroundings. They were shocked to see human shadows appear in all directions. "Why didn't we sense them?" Nagato inquired anxiously. Darkly, Naruto remarked, "The only ones skilled enough to evade our sensory powers could be Anbu." When multiple ninjas in Anbu uniforms appeared out of the trees, bushes, ground, and water, he was shown to be correct. They were numerous, and the blood of all the Uzumaki they had previously slain was still visible on their swords. They surrounded the two boys from all sides, but not a single one of them made a sound. A chilly voice said, "Get me the shorter one, he can still be of use." Another Anbu was standing atop one of the trees when Naruto looked up. Like his minions, he wore an animal mask over his face. Naruto didn't miss the man's eye on Nagato, even though he had a big sword strapped to his back. "Did you kill my people?" Naruto pointedly inquired. Taunted the seasoned Anbu, "So, you're the leader of this group. What a failure you are as a shinobi." With a fractured voice, Nagato questioned, "Why did you do this?" The man calmly replied, "The Uzumaki must be processed for the Hidden Leaf's future. You slaughtered defenseless civilians. We were your allies, you jerk." Nagato cried out in a deceitful tone, tears streaming down his cheeks. "There is no such thing as allies in this ninja world. If you were a true ninja, then you would have understood that no sane village would spend their resources after civilians. Uzu did this foolish mistake, and paid for it," replied the Anbu sternly. Even as the Anbu got closer to Naruto, he firmly grasped the tanto and said, "You gave those villages the location of our home. Konoha betrayed us. Your alliance was too costly for our village. Giving you hundreds of yen every year, along with food, medical supplies was too worthless. Instead we can use these same supplies to establish our dominance over the world. The remaining Uzumaki children will also lead meaningful lives while serving Konoha. I give you the same choice, suggested the leader of Anbu. Who are you? Nagato inquired. The Anbu leader's remaining patience appeared to have been wiped out by that. He merely nodded, and Naruto froze the next moment as two Anbus materialized directly in front of him. When Naruto finally opened his eyes, he saw that Nagato had positioned himself between his final friend and the two Anbu. As the boy gazed at Naruto with agonized eyes, two large slashes had appeared across his chest. Run! Nagato fell to the ground. As their leader nodded, the Anbus surrounded the quivering boy from all sides, their weapons up to attack. Nagato's immobile body, eyes closed, and a pool of blood forming beneath him, soaking the green grass, continued to captivate Naruto's frightened gaze. Recollections of Nagato's pledge, Akino's smile, the slaughter of his people, the destruction of Uzu, and finally this. Ah! As the Anbu leader's eyes widened, he leapt several feet away and saw his soldiers grasping their throats in desperation on the ground, some attempting to cover the holes that had appeared across their bodies, while others were literally blasted to tiny pieces. With his eyes completely blackened and dark layers of energy swirling around his body, the young Uzumaki stood up robotically. Trees began to rot, grasses began to wither, and the corpses all around began to deteriorate into nothing more than bones. You are the child of Kyuubi Jinchuriki, the Anbu leader said sourly, to think she lied to us. With their eyes still fixed on the strange boy who was brutally killing the Anbu on the ground, another group of Anbu who had previously remained hidden came to their leader's side and formed a protective barrier around the man. Sir, what ought we to do? Anbu inquired. Konoha's barrier teams will undoubtedly be alerted by this energy surge. The Hokage's finest men will arrive shortly. Go to phase 2 right away, the Anbu leader said. What ought we to do regarding the boy? Asked the youthful Anbu once more. Go away from him. We don't have the time to research potential countermeasures against a Maiden, dark release user, and we don't know of any. In addition, he is acting like a cornered animal and appears to be losing control of his abilities. For now, we'll withdraw and catch him later. He will be a great asset to our village, the Anbu leader said. The majority of the Uzumaki children have already been apprehended. The Anbu leader remarked, the rest of the people were just useless to us. Sir, you made the right decision. Uzu was starting to become too much of a burden for us to handle. With your help, we were able to not only get rid of a possible danger but also conserve resources and find new members for our village. The young Anbu responded, we'll take care of the cleanup, to which his fellow soldiers nodded. They all joined their swords and spoke clearly as they spoke. For Konoha. When Naruto felt something strike the side of his head, he opened his eyes blearily. He was momentarily blinded by the sunlight at first, but as his eyesight gradually adapted to the surroundings, he noticed a deep shade of red. After attempting to clear his vision for a few more moments, he eventually caught sight of a mop of dark red hair. You made it. Naruto uttered wearily. As he assisted his friend in standing up, Nagato merely nodded sadly. He was taken aback when Naruto briefly embraced him. Nagato's only option was to put a reassuring hand on his friend's shoulder. Nagato calmly said, told you my healing powers are better than yours, in a sorrowful tone. Naruto hesitantly said, for a moment, I thought, and his friend nodded. Though he was not proud of what he had done, Nagato suggested, we were an assassination squad, Naruto. All of us know how to maintain stealth, and besides my supposed fake death was enough to save the two of us from those ambush squads. It was necessary for both of their survival. As Nagato put a hand on Naruto's shoulder, he said anxiously, I don't remember. In a sympathetic reply, Nagato said, it's better this way, Naruto. You really don't want to know what happened when you unleashed your dark powers. I killed them all, didn't I? It was a statement rather than a question. Nagato had to grudgingly concur with it. Brutally. Nagato admitted. The only response Naruto gave was, I see. Nagato asked gravely, what do we do now, Naruto? After being silent for a short while, the former team leader finally looked his friend in the eye. With an air of resolve in his voice, Naruto declared, I want to go after our captured people. It's suicide, Naruto. We were no match for those Anbu, and besides there aren't many of us left to rescue. Akeno too. Slap as Nagato stroked his now red cheek, Naruto worriedly remarked, she's alive. And unless I see her cold, Dead corpse, I am not giving up on her. And neither am I giving up on the innocent Uzumaki children. Only Kami knows what those Konoha bastards would do to them. Nagato said glumly, we should have listened to you. We should have never come here. It's over. It's all over now. Naruto screamed angrily, it isn't over until I say it's over. Nagato was taken aback by the unadulterated rage that was blazing in his friend's eyes. Naruto was being eaten from the inside out by the urge to strike back. I can't, Nagato admitted, expressing his fear of being surrounded by those Anbu once more. For Kami's sake, he was only a chunin. Naruto spit out, the only reason you don't want to go after our comrades is because you lack conviction. As his friend gave him a stern look. Naruto reduced the glare Nagato was giving him when he admitted, and the only reason I couldn't keep them safe in the first place was because I was weak. With hesitation, Nagato uttered, we'll die, Naruto. Maybe, Nagato angrily questioned, why are you so damn stubborn? And watched as Naruto turned away. Nagato was unsure, but he noticed a tiny tear escape Naruto's normally composed eye as he spoke in a heavy voice, because Akano and those few remaining children are the only reason left for me to exist. My parents abandoned me, but the Uzumaki are the only family I have left. And I will do anything to protect them. What if you fail? Nagato asked. Then I'll just die, but until then, I will keep on fighting. Because I am a warrior, not a sheep. Naruto left a stunned Nagato in his wake after saying those words. Naruto smirked as he saw someone else approaching next to him as he bounded through Fire Nation's endless forests, and he appeared very unhappy. Nagato mockingly glared at Naruto as he reprimanded him, saying, took you long enough. Nagato said gently, you're crazy, which caused his friend to grin. Wouldn't be the first time. That gave Nagato a small smile, somehow. Nagato, who had to run a good distance to catch up with his friend and team leader, asked impatiently, so, what's the plan? How will we find out where they have taken our people? Or do you just plan to roam aimlessly until you stumble upon a trail? Already done. When we fled from Uzu, I carefully planted hidden tracker seals on the children. Those little shits often get lost, so I took that precautionary measure to keep them safe. Who knew it would become so useful now? Explained Naruto, as Nagato cocked his. As his friend looked ahead, Nagato said bluntly, I didn't know that. Naruto explained stoically, it was classified information, only need to know basis. Nagato asked knowingly, and who needed to know? Nobody. Just me. Nagato let out a sigh. This was similar to Naruto, who planned everything on his own. Since that move was currently working for them, he wasn't really able to say anything. He wished Akano was present during these moments because she was the only person who could fully comprehend Naruto. Perhaps that was the reason Naruto was so determined to save the people they had captured. Or perhaps he did care. Conclusions about Naruto were very difficult to draw, and even after all these years, Nagato was still unable to fully comprehend his best friend. Nagato inquired anxiously, are you going to use your dark powers? Yes, Naruto said icily. Nagato worriedly remarked, but you can't fully control them. Katsuro-sama was always teaching me new tricks to use my power for good. I haven't mastered them, but it should be enough to help us in a fight. Naruto confidently stated. Nagato said sheepishly, I still don't understand your powers, which caused Naruto to shrug. Consider them a harmful side effect for being the child of a Jinchuriki. Another one of my mother's great gifts to me, laughed Naruto sarcastically. Nagato questioned reluctantly, you don't miss her, Naruto? Never knew in her the first place. All I had for a mother my entire life was a picture and few letters, and I don't care where she is or even if she is alive or dead, sighed Naruto. Nagato countered, you don't mean that, which caused his friend to sigh wearily. My case is different than yours, Nagato. You knew your parents, they loved you and cared for you unlike mine. And they were honorable ninjas who sacrificed their lives for the village, patiently explained Naruto. What about your father? Nagato inquired with hope. Don't know, don't care, Naruto said calmly. Nagato just gave a headshake. Understanding Naruto's attitude toward his blood family was a pointless endeavor. All he could do was hope they never met in person or else he would invite catastrophe. As Naruto signaled to stop, a seal on his hand glowed brightly. As Naruto executed a series of hand seals and lightly touched the bark of the tall tree he was hiding in, both boys swiftly sought refuge in the verdant trees. Nagato followed suit. Can you feel them? Naruto inquired gravely. Nagato affirmed, yes, they're close, possibly underground. Appears to be a large enemy base. "Several mazes, we'll have to use our sensory powers at all times or risk getting lost," said Nagato. "You're right. We do this quietly or risk getting ambushed again, agreed?" asked Naruto. "Agreed," Nagato said. With his eyes still closed, Naruto said, "Bring out SGE." He focused his senses on the enemy base nearby. Without saying a word, Nagato carried the big scroll on his back, sealed it with a few hand motions, and then spread a little of his own blood across the surface to open it. Both boys began preparing, and Naruto soon joined him. A few hours ago, hunters had ambushed them, and now it was time for the target of the hunt. Even though this was nothing new for Nagato, he was still a little uneasy because he was doing something similar. This was because his whole body was invisible to the unaided eye. Not totally, though. Dokumanto, dark cloak. The light surrounding them had gone completely out as soon as Naruto had uttered those words. The two boys were completely engulfed in the shadows of darkness. Even the bright sun in the sky could not shine on them. He observed Naruto devoting a lot of energy to strengthening his enigmatic jutsu by focusing intently, both mentally and physically. At one point, the Uzukage had informed Nagato and Akeno that their teammate was possibly the world's darkest ninja. Because of his abilities, not his personality. Dark release. Might an A-force that their world had not yet comprehended. Naruto might have been the first to use it. Naruto's mother, Kushina Uzumaki, was also a member of the Nine Tails Jinchuriki. She disclosed an incident in which the Nine Tails seal nearly broke, but she never disclosed Naruto's father's name. She was on vacation with her alleged lover during one of her trips. She was furious that the Kumo shinobi had attempted to kidnap her once more because she had experienced a similar attempt as a young girl. She recalled the Kumo ninja's mistreatment of her and how powerless she had been. In addition to ruthlessly killing the Kumo team, the Nine Tails seal almost broke as a result of the unbridled rage that had exploded. Regretfully, Kushina was pregnant at the time. Her son, who was still developing inside her womb, was also impacted by the malevolent Nine Tails chakra that overloaded her body. Over half of Naruto's chakra pathways and the entire network were corrupted by the unexpected biological attack on his still developing form. The tailed beasts were ultimately creatures composed of enigmatic energy and chakra, and they were said to have a range of emotions. One tail was lustful for blood. Naruto also received this power indirectly from the Nine Tails. However, there was a high price for it. Compared to a normal Uzumaki, Naruto's chakra reserves were only half as large, and he struggled to maintain ninjutsu for more than a few hours at a time. If he ever completely masters his dark powers, I don't think he'll even need ninjutsu in the first place, secretly thought Nagato. Naruto had been personally cared for by the Uzukage in his early years, because there were times when Naruto lost his temper and his uncontrollable abilities caused a great deal of harm. However, the sage Uzukage taught Naruto how to manage his abilities rather than viewing him as a danger. Nagato had seen the remains of those who had killed Konoha Anbu, and it was still a work in progress. An actual example of what might occur if Naruto ever lost control. Nevertheless, Naruto's abilities were simply astounding when he was sane and in control. Even though their team was young, they had carried out multiple assassination missions for this reason alone. Naruto hissed, "Nagato, stop moving." The younger boy immediately stopped at the abrupt command. When he noticed two tall Hyuga standing watch outside the entrance, he grimaced. Oddly, they had their Byakugans active and were dressed in standard Junin uniforms rather than Anbu attire. In a panic, Nagato whispered, "They can see us. Not if you stay still. The shadow mist I created around you can hide your form even from the Byakugan, but it won't stop those sharp Hyuga to spot the movements you make, like rustling of leaves, or the sound of footsteps we make on the grass." Irritated Naruto. Nagato gave an obedient nod. He was a competent Chunin, but it was too risky to question a Hyuga's level of alertness. In addition, Akeno had cautioned him against arguing with Naruto on numerous occasions over the years. It could result in extremely dangerous situations, particularly when he was using his dark powers. An obvious enough warning sign was that Naruto's left eye was now slit and had gone completely red, and a clear indication of how Naruto's body was impacted by the corruption of the Kyuubi chakra. In the hopes that Naruto had a solution, Nagato asked, "So how do we get past them, without making movements or sound?" When he noticed Naruto grinning menacingly, he regretted asking. "Watch." Naruto only said that before reaching forward with his right hand. He gestured to the Hyuga on the right, and a chilly, icy expression came into his eyes. Doiryogen, dark illusions. Initially, nothing occurred. To his comrade's surprise, however, The targeted Hyuga deactivated his Byakugan 2 minutes later. Nagato observed Naruto clenching his fist and gritting his teeth. The other unaffected Hyuga asked, "Ken?" His fellow clansman was clearly not feeling well. Ken calmly replied, "I'm fine, Yamada," and his worried partner nodded. Yamada felt a sharp object pierce his throat as he turned back to his spot, relieved. As he barely turned on his Byakugan again, he realized that Ken was the one who had attacked, remaining composed while launching another kunai into the heart of his clansman. Yamada fell to the ground. Ken hastily carried his deceased companion to the surrounding bushes, dug a shallow grave, and threw the body into it. He then used basic water jutsu to remove the bloodstains from the floor. Nagato watched as drops of perspiration fell from Naruto's brow. His friend was clearly suffering from that move. Then the deformed Hyuga moved forward and knelt in front of an unseen presence. With a rough, weary voice, Naruto whispered, "How many people are in the base?" 25, my lord, was the Hyuga's blank response. Naruto said, "I see. Where are the captured Uzumaki children?" The Hyuga said, "I don't know," which caused Naruto to frown in disappointment. Naruto asked sourly, "What do you mean?" as Nagato had a fleeting glimpse of what might be going on. Nagato abruptly inquired, "Who is the commander of this base?" The Hyuga did not respond. Instead, they gazed into emptiness. Naruto caught Nagato's attention. "Answer him, slave," Naruto ordered. "Yes, master. This is not a base, but a private research laboratory of Konoha. Its current head is Orochimaru," said the Hyuga. Naruto asked earnestly, "Nagato, have you ever heard of a ninja with this name?" Nagato swiftly questioned, "No, he must be a rising ninja. Which rank does this Orochimaru hold?" "Junin." Naruto asked ominously, "Is he inside the base?" This Orochimaru's fate would have been even worse if he had even injured one of his clansmen. The Hyuga candidly stated, "Not at the moment, but he will be here soon." Naruto said, "Very well. Go back to your post and act normal." The Hyuga nodded and hurried off. With 1,000 questions in his eyes, Nagato turned to face his friend right away. However, he condensed them all into 7 words. Nagato asked, "How the fuck did you do that?" But his friend shot him a glare. Later, "I can't control this Hyuga for long, let's infiltrate the base. You clear on what we have to do?" asked Naruto with seriousness. "Yes. Noise discipline is necessary." Nagato concurred, and his friend's smile made him appear more menacing than comforting. "Let's kick them in the balls." Nagato was only a few paces behind Naruto as he dashed through the base's dim hallways. He himself had to concede that whoever had constructed this place had a rather eerie taste and a penchant for puzzles. He questioned whether he could ever find his captured comrades without becoming lost if it weren't for his senses. Additionally, he had a short window of time to complete his goals without being discovered. For a Chunin who is deep inside enemy lines, that's a pretty high order. But no matter the odds, he had to do it. He didn't work by abandoning his comrades, especially defenseless children. Furthermore, he would sooner be damned to hell than allow a Kano to decay in such an unsettling location teeming with Konoha filth. He watched a young woman in a lab coat leave one of the rooms with a chilly, heartless look on her face. The Uzu Chunin, leaning from the ceiling obscured by dark shadows, lurched down without hesitation. The woman's potential scream was silenced when Naruto's tiny, sharp tanto pierced her throat. Before the woman or the blood spurting from her body could reach the ground, Nagato had already made his move, and the younger Uzumaki sealed the woman's body and the red liquid inside a scroll. Nagato was carrying a bag on his back, and the sealed scroll was now securely back inside. There was no sign of the woman or how quickly she was killed, and the whole ordeal ended before it had even started. Naruto turned to face his partner and used his practiced hand signals to convey his intended message. "My shadow cloaks will only last for an hour or less. The jutsu cast on the Hyuga not more than 45 minutes. We need to speed up," whispered Naruto. With his own hand signals, Nagato said, "Understood. Maybe you should have killed the last Hyuga guard?" No guards protecting the base would have raised instant suspicion if some Konoha ninja or Orochimaru stumbled across. "Had to play safe," said Naruto. Nagato answered, "Then let's make it count fast." Agreed. They saw numerous labs with cutting-edge equipment and multiple pods as they made their way around the base. The 2 Uzu Chunin were only more concerned about what would happen to their people as a result. But now they were too far gone to go back. As soon as they reached a room, Naruto swiftly raised his hand. Nagato immediately positioned himself on the other side. With his hand signals, Naruto explained the plan to his friend. Take out the mute charge, we finish them all in 10 seconds. With a nod, Nagato removed a unique seal from his pouch and fastened it to the metal door. They detected the signatures of at least 20 people in the room, most of whom were civilians and only a small number of whom had chakra. Nagato gave his teammate the thumbs up, and the seal briefly glowed. The Uzumaki War Machine's mute charge was one of its most recent innovations. It could stop any sound waves from leaving within 100 yards of its placement. After Naruto kicked the door with a chakra-powered kick, Nagato threw multiple smoke bombs inside at once. The boys, still wearing their shadow cloaks, crept into the room and positioned themselves by the only door leading to the outside. As anticipated, the scientists, who were now encircled by smoke, hurried to the exit. Where, with a savage taunto, Naruto waited for them. This time, Nagato didn't even hesitate before Naruto began ruthlessly murdering anyone who had come near him. The elder Uzumaki, still hiding in the shadows, began ruthlessly killing people while his short taunto danced mesmerizingly. Blood and severed heads rained down, and people screamed, but no one could hear their frightened cries. Even more horrifying was the fact that something invisible was chopping them up one by one, as if sound itself had been sucked out into a vacuum. Slowly, Nagato was trailing Naruto as he cleaned up the bloodstains and corpses on the walls and floor. The majority of these individuals were merely guards and simple scientists, so he didn't really need to keep an eye on his friend's back. With the exception of the one the boy was now clutching by the throat, they were all brutally killed by Naruto's taunto. Nagato smiled for some reason at that sick scene. Watching a man being held in midair by an unseen force was the most fascinating thing in the world. Where are the kids and Akeno? Naruto inquired somberly. Who are? Ah! When Naruto drove a sharp kunai right through the man's balls, he let out a scream. Naruto said sourly, I ask the questions, you answer. Where are they? Inside the room, the bleeding scientist gestured with a trembling finger to a flight of stairs that descended below. Nagato had to hold back from killing this ailing man. Are there any other escape routes apart from the main entrance? Don't lie or the next sharp weapon goes through your neck, told Naruto. There's a secret exit inside the main lab below, on the far right corner, whispered the scientist. Good, was praised for Naruto. Please let me go. I have kids, the middle-aged man begged. With disgust, Naruto questioned, so are those children whom you were experimenting upon just expendable? Nagato, will you do the honors? Nagato quickly decapitated the man and sealed everything inside a scroll before the man's body or blood could even reach the ground. There were no longer any indications of a minor massacre taking place, and the entire room was deserted. No blood, no bodies, no proof. Everything seemed to have disappeared as though a ghost had wandered across the base. The two boys wasted no more time and hurried down the long flight of stairs. After they had killed the two guards and two scientists inside the room, Nagato was greatly relieved when Naruto vanquished the shadows that had been hiding their presence up until that point. Afterward, the bodies and blood were sealed, removing any evidence of their presence. However, their sense of satisfaction was short-lived as they discovered that all of the Uzumaki children were imprisoned in water tanks filled with a greenish substance. Naruto's breathing was labored. When he used even a small portion of his power, he became extremely exhausted. But at the moment, he was only horrified to see his clansmen in such a state. When he saw Akeno sealed on the fourth tank from the left, he literally rushed forward. Worriedly, Naruto put a trembling hand on the glass and looked at his best friend and teammate's sleeping form. Nagato hurriedly said, "We need to get them out," as he walked over to a table with multiple notes on it. He turned around when he didn't hear back from his friend and noticed that a gloomy expression was starting to appear on his face. Nagato questioned hesitantly, "What's the matter?" At first, Naruto didn't respond. Instead, he proceeded to the stairs, halted at the first step, and turned back to Nagato. "Someone's coming. I am going to investigate, you get our people out quickly," told Naruto. But, Nagato countered, with his gaze still flitting to Akeno's floating form. Naruto said, "Not now, Nagato. Just do it, please." Nagato sternly warned, "All right. But I want you back here in 5, and do not engage anybody else. We have spilled enough blood for today." Naruto grinned. "Yes, Grandma," Naruto remarked mockingly. When Nagato threw a kunai in his direction, he had to duck down. Naruto laughed a little and hurried upstairs, picking up the kunai as he went. so as not to leave any trace. The grin he had previously given Nagato was abruptly replaced by a worried look. Footsteps reverberated through the deserted corridors. Naruto was suspended from the floor's ceiling, his body hidden by his shadows. With his hawk-like eyes focused intently on the corridor's entrance, he had undoubtedly sensed a strong chakra signature coming their way. And based on how quickly it was encroaching on their position, there was only one option. They were in the open. Naruto had no time to consider the loophole and was unable to comprehend how that could have occurred. A tall figure stepped out of the darkness, interrupting his thoughts. Naruto stopped the individual before he could even step foot on the trap he had set. As a pair of ominous-looking eyes opened up in the hallway's darkness, a sinister chuckle escaped the person's lips. Kukuku. I know you're there. Orochimaru watched his surroundings warily for any indication of movement or sound. His senses were screaming that someone else was hiding in the shadows, even though he was alone in the hallway. The dark, foul presence was palpable to him. There was a genuinely evil aura all around, just waiting to strike. He had even made fun of the invisible enemy in the hopes of receiving a response, but he got none. So, they have brains as well. The way they infiltrated the base made my team and guards disappear. They must be Anbu or at least high Jonin level shinobi, Orochimaru concluded. He was fairly certain of the enemy's identity. Only his fellows knew about the experiments being conducted on the kidnapped Uzumaki children. Only those who were still alive would be able to object to such a practice and respond with such ruthlessness. However, he had been told that the Uzumaki clan was dead except for the children who had been taken prisoner. He had obviously been kept in the dark, and now he had soldiers of the Anbu class attacking his valuable research. Orochimaru vowed, "You know you can't escape from here, I'll find you." No answer once more. It was time to use other strategies because it appeared that standard threats would not work against this adversary. Orochimaru would attack this enemy without hesitation and only required a clue as to where they were. Then he would suddenly strike. You know, for a clan praised to be as strong as the Uchiha and Senju, the Uzumaki turned out to be nothing but sheep, cowards who got slaughtered easily, chided Orochimaru. Naruto controlled his emotions while hiding in the shadows that covered his body. It's simple to say, but difficult to do. He had two sides to his power. The emotions and vile chakra within him gave the dark release strength. His power increased with the depth of his emotions, but doing so came with the risk of losing control and becoming publicly visible. Throughout his life, Naruto had lost control numerous times, and each time he had to wake up to see river blood that he had made himself. He didn't enjoy killing, but he didn't feel bad about it because he didn't want this power and it was imposed upon him. However, he carried out that sinister deed for the benefit of his clan and village, one of whom had vanished entirely, while the other was scarcely left. He had emotions, despite what many people think. Joy, rage, grief, rage, and, worst of all, hatred. He was not, however, free to express them as others were. It was a necessity rather than a choice. He did have an unnatural advantage because of his special power, but it was also the reason for his lonely and miserable existence. He hadn't wasted much of his life, however, cursing fate. Naruto was not supposed to live a long life as a shinobi, so that would be a horrible waste of time. So why waste time worrying about something he couldn't control? However, this man's accusations were hurtful, because they contained a tinge of bitter truth. His clan had ignored the perilous developments in the chaotic ninja world because they were too self-centered and trusting, and in the end, they paid a terrible price for it. The Uzumaki had been virtually exterminated from the planet, with the exception of a scant 50 children. Never again. Naruto thought sourly. You fools valued peace so much and thought that non-alignment with any major powers would keep you safe. There can be no peace among humanity, much less the shinobi world. The weak can find a place to live in this world, but the same is not the case with fools. Orochimaru continued. When Naruto realized it, his eyes briefly widened. Even though he was an enemy, this man was merely stating the unpleasant facts that Naruto had been attempting to ignore up until this point. On top of his clan's dead bodies, his dream of peace was shattered. When he had to face reality, it severely demoralized him. Now what was he meant to do? He had a home, friends, his own dreams, and a promising future just a few weeks ago. All of that had vanished, though, and all that remained was a huge hole in his chest that threatened to engulf him in a never-ending pit of loss and despair. He sensed the chakra signatures of the Uzumaki children, Nagato, and Akeno disappearing from the base. Now it would be so simple to give up. Since he had no surviving family to genuinely miss him, Nagato and Akeno would ensure the children's survival. Now that he was seeing the treacherous world around him, his hopes for peace seemed unattainable. No. He was startled by the rebellious yelling of an angry voice from his subconscious. Why should he pass away? Was this world unworthy of his dreams? Didn't he have the right to satisfy his desire in an era when people did what they wanted? Iwa, Kumo, Kiri, Konoha, or any other hidden village, for that matter, lacked any semblance of empathy or sympathy for one another. It was a jungle all around. The weak perish, the strong live. The Uzumaki were eaten because they had been gullible and weak. As Naruto Uzumaki, I swear to make my dream come true, no matter the cost. Naruto thought fervently. In fact, Orochimaru was taken aback when a mass of shadows began to swirl before him. He saw a teenage boy with one red eye staring at him from inside. His face was hidden behind a mask, but his dark red hair was visible to everyone. The Konoha Jonin was taken aback by the boy's expression. The predator's eyes. Sincerely, Naruto said, thank you for teaching me something fundamental. And what is that? Orochimaru asked inquisitively, and the boy gave him a cunning grin. That the ultimate truth is meaningless in this world. The only thing that really counts is the ability to freely achieve one's dreams, Naruto stated coolly. What's your name, boy? Orochimaru inquired earnestly. Orochimaru instantly got ready for battle as the redhead merely raised 2 fingers and smiled mysteriously. Boom. Orochimaru didn't need more than a second to realize what was happening when several explosions began to occur throughout the base. He immediately turned to face the boy who had nearly vanished back into the darkness. You'll find out soon enough. The boy disappeared back into the night after making that vow. Though the entire base was collapsing and he would have preferred not to be crushed by rocks first, Orochimaru would have loved to locate the brat and teach him some lessons. Therefore, the enemy had not invaded his territory without a contingency plan in case things didn't work out. That boy, whoever he was dangerous and had some dark, unsettling information about Konoha and himself. However, he had to save his own life before he could deal with this situation. Orochimaru began running frantically after promising, "We shall meet again, Uzumaki." Nagato had been gazing at the Uzumaki children in Akino's sleeping forms. While the last of the Uzumaki clan lay sheltered by a sturdy barrier, the moon shone its sliver light across the earth. Naruto had bought them enough time, but it had not been an easy escape from the base. For that, he detested his friend. A quality that only a select few shinobi possessed was the ability to remain composed under pressure. However, it also made clear that Naruto was worthless for his own life. To him, he was just a mere ninja who could be used for the greater good. This was what his friend had always thought and had lived by every day of their lives. Naruto led the charge, suffered serious injuries, and completed the mission at all costs, even during the most suicidal missions their team had ever encountered. Although Nagato didn't like his friend's attitude, he could understand why. In contrast to him and Akeno, Naruto had experienced things that profoundly affected his life from the beginning. His own villagers' fatigue, his lack of parents and family, and most importantly, his uncontrollable abilities. Naruto had dedicated his life to the village and the Uzumaki clan's preservation in order to get over these scars. That, along with a modest personal objective for peace among the elemental nations, was the reason he was here. Nagato shared this dream, but the extreme course of events in their lives had mercilessly destroyed it. Nagato was immediately startled by the sound of leaves rustling, and when he turned around, Naruto was approaching him calmly. The younger boy hurried over to his masked friend, a smile spreading across his face. Nagato worriedly said, "I thought you died," while examining his friend's body for any wounds. Luckily, there weren't many scratches. Naruto grinned. Nagato gave Naruto a glare when he joked, "There is only one Naruto Uzumaki, and there will only be one man whose name may be remembered for killing me. I wonder who'll be that person." Nagato's friend held up a hand of appeasement in response to his warning, "I am in no mood for your theatrics this time, Naruto." Nagato pursed his lips and patiently asked Naruto, Fine. How are the others?" "I am no medic, but even I can see they are weak. While no external injuries are visible, I can't be sure about any internal injuries. Though I've yet to sense any of them, so I have some hope. Your decision to immediately go after our comrades probably saved their lives," bluntly stated Nagato. "I did what was necessary." Naruto began to approach Akino's sleeping form after giving that straightforward response. Nagato let out a sigh. Nagato saw his friend's fists clenching tightly and said, "Naruto, it isn't a crime to be proud of accomplishing a nearly impossible feat. For example, With his eyes downcast and his voice full of remorse, Naruto muttered, "If I had been better, so many of our people wouldn't have died. So I shouldn't. Naruto. With hesitation, Naruto said, "I still want peace in this world, Nagato, but..." Nagato screamed angrily, "How can you say that after everything that has happened to our village? Our clan? Our comrades?" Naruto pivoted and gazed empathetically at his companion. Nagato was unaware that Uzumaki Naruto could sense every emotion blazing in his friend's heart, from the grief to the hatred. Naruto calmly asked, "Then what do you propose?" and noticed that Nagato was staring at him with a chilly expression. "The only way to achieve peace in this world is by making humanity feel pain. Unless those in power don't know this feeling, wars will keep on happening," declared Naruto. With that captivating gleam in his eyes, Naruto hinted, "What if I say there's another way?" Nagato hesitated. He furrowed his brows, and the anger subsided slightly. Naruto typically came up with the most logical plans while keeping the actual goals in mind. It wouldn't cost him anything, at least, to hear the idea. "Fine." Nagato conceded. Naruto grinned. He described his dream to his friend, checking that the silencing seals were functioning correctly, and the manner in which he would proceed in its direction. Nagato sheepishly said, "I thought." How foolish he had been. Naruto sneered. Naruto questioned impatiently, "You don't think I'll simply spare the ones that destroyed our clan?" With hope, Nagato said, "So..." But Naruto held up his hand. Murdering Naruto, he was shocked when Nagato turned away. "But you're out of your mind if you think I'll destroy 4 great ninja villages and nearly 60% of the world's population in a mad quest," he said. "Well..." Naruto let out a sigh. "You have a good heart, Nagato. However, make an effort to think rationally first and emotionally afterwards. It will help you achieve your objectives and keep you alive," Naruto said. "TCH. Muttered Nagato, and his friend stifled a laugh. Naruto, who was now in his teens, knew Nagato was a child in many respects. "Nagato, I swear to you. I won't destroy the world in retaliation, but I will make the people who have wronged our people pay with their lives. Destroying is easy, developing is hard," Naruto wisely counseled. "You and your quotations. In what capacity did you work as a historian before?" taunted Nagato. When Naruto said, "Hey, doesn't sound like a bad idea," Nagato genuinely grinned. "Can we ever have true peace, Naruto?" Nagato looked his friend in the eye and asked in a serious tone. He stepped forward toward the younger boy, his steely gaze meeting Nagato's doubtful gaze, and to his credit, Naruto never faltered. "I'll never give up." Naruto grinned and held out his hand to his friend as Nagato's eyes grew wide. "Let's use our abilities to make this world a better place rather than destroying it. Make me a promise?" hopefully asked Naruto. He didn't know what it was that kept him believing in this boy, but it was enough to keep the small flicker of light alive in Nagato's heart as he stared at him and his right hand automatically rose to meet the one Naruto had extended towards him. "This world might be saved by you. I will have faith in you, Naruto," Nagato secretly pledged. The younger Uzumaki merely nodded to his friend on the outside. The conference room had a very tense atmosphere, and although the people seated in their cozy chairs were leaders and the best of Fire Nation's masses, their expressions ranged from shock to anger to trepidation to fear to grief. Hiruzen sat in the middle, his face showing signs of weariness as he gripped his forehead regretfully. "Is this accurate?" With regret, Hiruzen inquired. "Good." Danzo Shimura declared, "The Uzumaki have been totally destroyed, their village destroyed, and all of their inhabitants killed." Jiraiya and Minato Namikaze stood next to the exhausted third Hokage. The white-haired Hiruzen student was staring at the blonde Junin, whose face was a flawless display of composure and control, but the clenched fists were sufficient to give Jiraiya the information he required. The combined armies of Iwa, Kumo, and Kiri were put up a fierce fight by the Azukage and all of the fighters. The battle was so intense that the outnumbered Uzumaki managed to eliminate almost 30% of the enemy forces before being destroyed, Danzo said politely. Even though he didn't really like that clan, he respected authority, and the Uzumaki had shown Konoha their value even in their death. Clan heads and top Junin and Anbu heard the news with shocked gasps across the room. It was an uncommon occurrence for any one clan to deal so much damage to the combined might of 3 great ninja villages, and it only served to emphasize the strength of the Uzumaki, a distant relative of the Senju clan. Regarding that, Tsunade Senju closed her eyes in sorrow. Although she did not have a close relationship with her distant relatives, they were nonetheless family. "Danzo-sama, were there any survivors? Perhaps some could have gotten away while the fighters bought them some time," Minato said with hope. You're correct. Although some were able to flee towards our borders, they were ultimately apprehended and killed. It draws attention to our complete inability to defend our allies as well as the vulnerability of our own borders. And the danger that hangs over our magnificent village, Danzo declared. My son. When Kushina's trembling voice was heard, many of the clan heads gasped in shock. They had been told that the redhead's first child had died at birth, but apparently that had not been the case. Their gazes turned to Hiruzen, who sighed, and Danzo shot him a sharp but stern look. The youngster was a boy. Only the cages of each village were aware of the secret agreement Konoha had always had with Uzu. Uzu would keep giving us new weapons and shinobi who could be the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki in return for resources and assistance. However, the male child was to be returned to Uzu right away if the female Uzumaki ever became pregnant, Hiruzen said. A methodical approach to thinking. Shibi Aburame proposed that a male Uzumaki who had grown up in Konoha could have easily recreated the clan over the years. Heishi Hyuga said, and render Uzu's importance to us quite bleak. Our village would also receive a partial Uzumaki clan if a girl was born to the Konoha Uzumaki. However, due to the strong genes that can only be passed down through a male, the offspring of such a child would not be as strong as a true Uzumaki. Despite being descended from Mito, Tsunade's longevity and healing abilities are nothing compared to those of her grandmother. Not to mention the sealing arts, which were that clan's real strength, Shikaku Nara explained delicately. And, Hiruzen, you let this happen? The third Hokage gave Danzo a stern look as he asked sourly. Danzo, that's Hokage-sama to you. Hiruzen calmly reminded him, remember your place. The message was clear. Hi, was Danzo's quick response, despite the constant eye fight between the two Tobirama Senju students. Hashirama-sama and Tobirama-sama both respected the treaty, which was an honorable one. I adhered to the same values established by our great founders, Hiruzen said coolly. Even though our village could have benefited from the Uzumaki? Apologies, Danzo asked. Minato moved forward, his icy eyes glaring down at Danzo before the minor altercation could get any worse. Danzo-sama, you have no right to question the Hokage, even though I can somewhat understand your viewpoint. Furthermore, you have no right to refer to my son as a simple tool. I won't permit that, Minato cautioned. With so few people in the village capable of opposing Danzo Shimura, let alone preventing him from expressing his opinions, many gazed in disbelief at the blonde Junin. As would have been the case with any other shinobi, Minato was regarded as the Nidaim's successor, and was one of Konoha's rising stars. People therefore paid attention when he spoke. Danzo noticed that the heads of several clans, including Jiraiya and Tsunade, were quietly supporting the blonde Junin. I understand. I apologize, it was inappropriate of me, Danzo said curtly. When Hiruzen noticed the abrupt change in his friend's behavior, he immediately narrowed his eyes, which was bad because Danzo rarely apologized to anyone, and whenever he did, there was always a reason for it. The Hokage, who was only 30 years old but had an intelligence as sharp as Danzo's, was further impressed by Minato after noticing the same wary expression in his eyes. However, it continues to make the point that Konoha can no longer maintain its neutrality. War is inevitable, Danzo said. The room was suddenly filled with murmuring, and Hiruzen held up his hand to stop a discussion from beginning. We ought to try to prevent war, Danzo. Hiruzen saw the same icy resolve in his friend's eye and pointed out, the last one had cost us so much, we even lost Tobirama-sama. Hokage-sama, don't be so naive. After destroying Uzu, do you think Iwa, Kiri, and Kumo will just stop? No, they will band together to attack us. And Konoha's destruction will be imminent when that occurs, Danzo cautioned. All of this is conjecture. Are you even aware of what you are suggesting? Inquired Jiraiya impatiently. On the contrary, I do. The world will learn that Konoha betrays its allies with ease if we do not strike back. Furthermore, we owe it to Uzu to bring justice to the criminals who brutally murdered an entire clan, Danzo fervently stated. Everyone's eyes turned to Kushina, who had hardly spoken throughout the meeting. Perhaps it was the shock of learning of her son's death or the ensuing grief that had frozen her. The redhead's eyes were haunted, and she had already shed a few tears. Even after all these years. Minato grimaced. When the majority of the people in the room gave the grieving mother determined looks, Danzo smiled inwardly and turned to face Hiruzen, who gave him a very dissatisfied and hateful look. Let there be war. Kushina continued to run, away from the council chambers, away from the people, away from everything. Her life had become gloomy, and she was jumping from rooftop to rooftop throughout Konoha, tears streaming freely down her cheeks. Her clan was destroyed, and her home was gone. Her son, too. She could still recall the small bundle she had to give to the Uzukage, and she remembered how painful the decision had been, but she had made it for her son, so he wouldn't have to go through what she had gone through. In order to prevent Konoha from using him as a weapon, a Jinchuriki successor, or even a breeder. Wait, Kushina. Even though the person was still chasing after her, she had been ignoring that voice for the past few minutes until Minato, who was in front of her and blocking her path, appeared. He didn't cry like she did, but she had known him for years, and she could tell by the look in his eyes that he felt the same way she did. But was more adept at managing them. Stiffly, Kushina said, "I have nothing to say to you, Minato." With hesitation, Minato said, "Kushina, How was he going to tell her when he himself? Don't be concerned. Even if they are unable to save my family, I will fight for this village," Kushina declared icily, drawing a glare from the blonde. Minato snapped back, "You know I have never doubted your loyalty," and observed her give him a cynical smile. "Minato, just leave. Now is your time to shine, your opportunity to show your value to your cherished village. Unfortunately, my son's life was lost as a result." After saying those icy words, Kushina disappeared. Minato stayed put. Only if he had realized that one mistake could cost a man so much, and only if he had not done what he did, would things have turned out differently. Just if. He was my son too, Kushina. 3 days later. Akeno opened her eyes blearily, and briefly panicked when she saw nothing but darkness. However, she was relieved when she felt a powerful pair of arms embrace her, which calmed her and caused her to cry a little as she heard his voice. "You're secure. It's finished." The girl's cheeks turned slightly red when she looked up to see Naruto grinning down at her, their lips just inches from one another, but she knew she was safe because in all the time she had known Naruto, he had never shown any signs of romantic feelings for any woman. She did occasionally question his sexual orientation as a result. It was refreshing, even though the boy had spent more bromance moments with Nagato than with her. "You're done, jerk?" asked Naruto in a puzzled manner. Akeno said, "Shut up," as a smile appeared on her lips. She then focused on him while he just stared back at her. She surprised Naruto by leaning forward and trying to kiss him on the lips, but he moved away just in time, so she kissed his cheek instead. Naruto cupped her chin and met her eyes directly before she could feel ashamed. She gave him a stern look, and Naruto hesitantly said, "You deserve someone better." With a hint of rage in her voice, Akeno answered, "Let me be the judge of that." Naruto slowly stood up again and moved a few meters to stand at the entrance to the cave where they were now hiding. "The third great ninja war has started." Akeno was completely taken aback by his words, and her eyes widened as she attempted to comprehend the ramifications of this disaster. Konoha joined the conflict in order to exact revenge on Uzu. It's kind of ironic, but Suna would come after them. All lands would be consumed by the flames of war, and a time of darkness would come upon us all, Naruto stated coolly. "And which side do you support?" Akeno smiled slightly as he asked hesitantly. "Mine. Every ninja village is my enemy, and I will continue to fuel this conflict. My objective is to cause them all to suffer terrible losses because, unless their economic and military might are destroyed, they will still have the will and ability to fight wars," Naruto stated bluntly. Hinting, this wasn't what the Uzukage wanted. Akeno recoiled at his piercing glare. "He has passed away, and it's up to me now. I don't have time to dwell on my regrets or wonder what he would have done in this circumstance. The unfortunate thing is that there cannot be peace in this world unless I start a war. I can't give you what you want, Akeno. Since I lack the ability to love, my very existence was an error," Naruto lamented. Even though his words were harsh, they only conveyed the bitter truth, and Akeno lowered her gaze. "Births must be controlled by an existence who's either extremely incompetent or extremely sarcastic," said Naruto with a grin. Akeno noticed that Naruto was staring at the Uzu headband he was clutching in his right hand. Naruto muttered, "Already, I have nothing left to lose." When he turned around, Akeno saw a fire in his eyes that she had never seen before, raw determination. Naruto vowed, "But even so, I will fight." The little boy's eyes turned to the sky, where the face of his dead Uzukage grinned down at him from above. "To keep my promise to you, and to acquire something in order to slake my inner thirst. Is that a powerful adversary or a good friend? Will you play that role in the ninja world?" Akeno and Nagato were standing next to their best friend, who was also their small clan's de facto leader. They waited calmly as Naruto carefully examined the map that was set before him. The only source of light in the pitch-black cavern was the faint fire they had started. The inquisitive young children, who trusted their final three guardians with their lives, lay contentedly in another area, chatting with one another. 3 weeks had passed since the Third Great Ninja War began. While Naruto and Nagato had carried out small raids throughout neighboring villages and gathered the resources they needed to maintain their family's survival, Akeno and the kidnapped children had gradually returned to full health. To avoid falling under Konoha's notice, the quantity of the stolen resources and goods had been purposefully kept low. According to Naruto, these small-scale raids would not only aid in their survival but also heighten the paranoia of the Fire Nation populace. The blame was always firmly placed on Kumo or, in some cases, Iwa, and no one ever suspected that the survivors of an extinct clan were responsible for these mischievous activities. The two Chunin had to acknowledge that Naruto was a cunning war strategist. The boy seemed destined for destruction. They were also a little uneasy based on the cynical, almost malevolent, smile that was visible on Naruto's lips. Naruto remarked, "Leave it to the Nara to do something like this." "What do you mean?" Akeno inquired, observing the silver-haired girl's frown. "Konoha is taking its time to step into this war. Rather than directly attack Iwa, Kiri and Kumo, they are organizing their armies. No matter how strong they are, they cannot possibly hope to take on 3 major villages all alone. If my guess is correct, they must have already sent a delegation to Suna," stated Naruto. On Nagato's suggestion, but what would Suna gain from allying with Konoha? They are at best cordial to each other. His friend merely grinned. No major village can avoid this war. Suna is right beside Iwa, and is the weakest among the big 5. The Tsuchikage alone could wipe out more than half of Suna shinobi on his own. While Suna has a strong ninja in the form of the Sandaime Kazekage, he is just one man. Fear and anxiety are common in war, and the Kazekage would rather ally himself with a pacifist and stable Hiruzen Sarutobi rather than face this world war alone. Smiled Naruto. Akeno said, "That does make sense," with a startled tone. With a nod from his friends, Nagato warned, "We can't let that happen. Neither can we afford Suna to stay neutral. If even one of the major villages remained strong after this war, then our entire cause would have failed." "You're right, Nagato. That's exactly why we're going to ruin this new alliance," Naruto said, his eyes icy. Together, his friends asked, "How?" which caused Naruto to raise 3 fingers. He explained the mission to his friends over the course of the following few minutes, and by the time he was done, they were both looking at him in astonishment and shock. "Is there a problem?" Naruto inquired meekly. Hesitantly, Akeno said, "No. It's just," and winced as Naruto's eyes pressed down on her. "We are an assassination squad. The 3 of us are the closest Anbu Zuzu ever had. Most of all, have you forgotten how every one of these villages played a part in destroying our village and our clan?" bluntly responded Naruto. "He's right. There is no room for sympathy. We must remain focused on the real objective, which is peace," Nagato firmly insisted. Akeno nodded. "Nagato, I want you to stay here and protect these children. I can't afford another mistake and I know you can do it," said Naruto with seriousness. Akeno grinned. Nagato had little opportunity to object because of the way Naruto had drafted his will. Nevertheless, the boy did that. Nagato questioned incredulously, "Don't tell me you plan to do this solo?" Naruto shook his head. "Akeno will be my partner for this operation, and it's just like you said, the only thing that matters is our mission, or have you changed your mind?" replied Naruto. Nagato winced. "We will be back within a week. Don't conduct any raids until then, stay here and protect our people. And most of all, start teaching them the basics of ninja arts," told Naruto. Akeno laughed as he worriedly asked Nagato, "You want me to babysit and teach? Are you insane?" "Maybe. But you are the only one among the 3 of us who has the patience and talent to teach others. Start training the ones who are fit to be a ninja. For those who don't have the talent, focus on teaching them the ways to make scrolls, stocking weapons, tailoring and medical ninjutsu. We may not have the numbers, but I won't allow these children to be weak again. When the next time they face the enemy, I want them to fight like true Uzumaki instead of crying out in fear and despair," bluntly stated Naruto. Nagato looked at the 10-year-old boys and girls and hesitantly remarked, "They are so young." Akeno witnessed Naruto's eyes briefly flash with regret, sadness, and guilt. Nagato could see that he was in pain on the inside, but he managed to hide it well enough for her to not notice. The same as the others. With a haunted expression in his eyes, Naruto uttered, "Only the victors are allowed to live. This world is merciless like that." "Naruto." The boy turned away and closed his eyes. The same determination and coldness were in his voice the next time he spoke. Naruto threw the scroll to his friend and cautioned, "Akeno, get ready for the mission. We move in 30 minutes, and Nagato, in case we don't make it back then I've left instructions for you in this scroll. Don't open it until absolutely necessary." Curious, Nagato looked at the small black object and asked, "What is in it?" "Something which I was supposed to use if I ever got in trouble. A safety measure given by my father." When Akeno and Nagato heard that, their eyes widened. All their lives, their friend had acted as though they didn't know his father, and they were staring at Naruto's back in shock. Naruto relayed that information and left without saying anything. He was obviously unwilling to divulge any additional information, and his friends grudgingly chose not to question him about this discovery. Nagato sighed deeply and remarked, "What a fucked up family." Akeno said weary, "Just pray that they never meet face to face." "Why?" Nagato inquired, observing a look of fear creep into the silver-haired girl's eyes. "It might just start another world war." Right now, Akeno lay motionless under the cover of a big tree. Her eyes were focused on the masked boy who was busy sorting through their mission gear, but she was occasionally struck by a cool breeze that made her smile. He had been preparing this operation for a while, she had to admit. "Why me?" He paused for a moment, looking at her as she asked the unexpected question. They looked at each other, and he realized what those words really meant. With his eyes slightly downcast, Naruto said, "Apart from the fact that your skills are more suitable than Nagato in this task. I want you as my partner. To keep me in control." "And why is that?" Akeno inquired calmly. "Because you have a heart, I don't. I always tend to focus towards our ultimate goal and tend to disregard the way we achieve it. I might even not hesitate to kill innocents for this task, especially when I use my dark powers. This risk greatly increases as I don't have full control. Nagato carries a lot of hatred in his heart and might not be determined and capable enough of stopping me. But you can, don't let me become a monster." "Akeno?" asked Naruto. She stood up again and moved to stand next to him. She smiled proudly at him and put a hand on his shoulder. "The fact that you know this is enough proof that you will not become the monster you fear, and neither will I let you become one," stated Akeno. He grinned. "Thanks." He had a pleasant smile, and Akeno couldn't help but notice it. She could hardly accept such a decision from someone who scarcely comprehended his own suffering, even if he had rejected her feelings. She would wait, then. She would stand by him as a faithful friend and comrade, rather than press him further. And perhaps a few years later, after all of this chaos had passed and their hope for peace had come true. Perhaps. There was little chance. A girl could hope, though. When Naruto realized that the silence had been going on for too long, he immediately gestured to the equipment he had set up close to their feet. Akeno turned her focus to the Konoha Anbu uniform that was spread out across her feet, grateful for the distraction. "Where did you get this?" Akeno inquired, startled. "Black markets can offer you a lot of interesting things, for a right price. And these are war times, getting things like these is much easier now," explained Naruto. "Clever. You know if this plan works, then each village will fight against the other. What are your future plans?" Akeno responded with interest. "One step at a time, Akeno," Naruto said bluntly, grinning. "You are a dangerous general," Naruto grinned. "That I am." Nagi Hyuga was watching the thick forest closely. He and his partner, Kenji Yamanaka, had been patrolling Fire Country's borders for the last 30 minutes. Their mission had taken on great significance as a result of the global conflict raging throughout the regions. He had not yet encountered any enemy forces attempting to breach their boundaries, and everything was going according to plan. That was encouraging. His Byakugan was observing every sector, so when an Anbu suddenly materialized directly behind him, he was rudely shocked. He saw that it was one of Konoha's Special Forces soldiers and jerked back to defend. In addition, he was holding a scroll. Nagi worriedly asked herself, "How did I not see him? Hey, you Anbus are always so sneaky. But I admit, getting a jump on a Hyuga is damn impressive," said Kenji. Nagi targeted the young adolescent Anbu with his Byakugan. Although Konoha did not formally admit such young children into such a sinister unit, he had heard rumors of a secret force that did. Root. Although there wasn't much information available about this unit, Nagi was aware that a large number of young teens belonged to that group. The fact that they supported Konoha was the only comfort he felt. He was so lost in his thoughts that when the Anbu raised his finger and Kenji became motionless, he didn't react right away. Nagi pressed a quick blow directly into this enemy's heart, but froze the next second. The young Anbu began to be surrounded by dark chakra, and Nagi shuddered in terror when she saw one of the boy's eyes turn a demonic red. Duiryogen, Dark Illusions. When Nagi saw multiple Suna shinobi moving toward Fire Nation, his heart began to race with fear and anxiety. He became angry and determined when he heard Hiruzen Sarutobi's frantic voice yelling in his head in retaliation. Hyuga was imprisoned in his own nightmare, Dreamworld, when Naruto used more willpower to drive the genjutsu. He could sense people's emotions thanks to his Maiden, and he was able to somewhat control them. More precisely, his weapons were anxiety, grief, anger, hatred, and fear. He targeted the most vulnerable part of a person's body rather than physically occupying any other parts. Psychological. However, there was a disadvantage to this method. Because he was able to sense and control his enemy's dark emotions, he was feeling them himself, and he did everything he could to avoid killing them immediately. While Yamanaka was ensnared in his own nightmare, Nagi was considering various methods to murder Suna ninja. Above all, it required a great deal of chakra. The ninjas broke and knelt before Naruto after enduring more inner torture for a few minutes. The two were merely puppets waiting to be used by a puppeteer, trapped in their own nightmares. And that was Naruto's intention. Naruto angrily ordered, "Hyuga, reassemble with the rest of your squad. Attack the closest Suna outpost and destroy our enemies." "Yes, I will prevent them from attacking our wonderful country," Nagi vowed. The effects of that genjutsu would hardly last 4 hours, but Naruto knew the damage would have been done this close to the border, so the Hyuga fled quickly to finish his new orders. Naruto turned to face the Yamanaka, who gave him a blank stare in return. The Uzumaki was grateful that these ninja had only been Chunin. Although his methods were effective, they were not strong enough to defeat the Junin and Anbu. However, Naruto planned to hone this skill with time and practice. After all, he was an assassin. Naruto was told to relay this message back to all border patrols. The Yamanaka gave a nod. Every unit, code Omega, is being attacked by Suna, has suffered significant losses. Ah. The frightened Yamanaka gurgled as Naruto cut his throat, silencing him. The Uzumaki was certain that the surrounding Konoha forces would also hear this sound. They had sent the message. Naruto thought gravely, Stage 1 complete. Time to move to Stage 2. He put a finger on the communication device that was concealed in his ear and made contact with his partner, who was performing another exercise nearby. "Akeno, report." There was a brief pause before a feminine voice calmly responded over the communication device. "Objectives accomplished. I've eliminated few Chunin, genjutsu'd a few and sent them on a suicide charge towards Suna posts. What about you?" replied Akeno quickly. "Done. Stage 1 is complete. Konoha itself will handle Stage 2 of our plan. Rendezvous with me and we'll finish the last part," instructed Naruto. When Akeno said, "You know, you might have scared an entire nation with this move," Naruto gave him a cynical smile. "Let's see how a cornered animal reacts." The regional command headquarters was in complete chaos and mayhem. Experts in communication were reporting incursion after incursion, and the tactical board was constantly being inundated with shifting enemy movements. The Konoha forces are either fighting or retaliating close to the Wind Country's border. Taji Uchiha clenched his jaw in annoyance and rage. Uchiha, the veteran, yelled, "Give me a full report, now." His dark eyes intimidated his subordinates. His second-in-command, a female Yamanaka, responded, "Sir, squads 67 and 68 are eliminated. Squads 44, 48, 50 are retaliating. We are still trying to get into contact with others." In exasperation, Taji slammed his hand against the table. There can be only two possible scenarios. Either a large-scale invasion force is striking at multiple locations, or Suna Anbu are striking at lightning-fast speed in order to pave a way for the main invasion force. Taji worriedly deduced. One of his aides said, "What do we do, Taji-sama?" For several minutes, the gray-haired Uchiha kept quiet while his analytical mind considered the different options available to him. Ultimately, he chose the most diplomatically appropriate course of action. "Tell our squads to fall back and regroup. It's better to consolidate our assets and wait for reinforcements. If this in an invasion staged by Suna, then I highly doubt individual squads would be able to offer much resistance against a larger enemy force. Contact High Command in Konoha. Inform them about the situation immediately," told Taji. With a swift nod, his subordinates proceeded to execute his directives. With hesitation, Taji thought, "The Hokage is not going to like this." "Taji-sama." The startled reaction of his second-in-command jolted the elderly Uchiha out of his reverie. He approached Yamanaka, a blonde woman, and met her gaze directly. Taji asked, "What is it, Mickey?" and noticed a terrified expression in her eyes. Mickey hesitantly said, "Our communications have been sabotaged," and recoiled when the Uchiha's eyes took on a murderous expression. Taji angrily yelled, "How the hell? We'll fix it later. Use your mind powers to reach Konoha." "I can't reach that distance." Mickey worriedly replied, "Only Inoichi-sama can convey such long-range messages," which infuriated her superior even more. "Fuck it. How good are you?" "Oh no, don't worry, get in touch with our regional office. Check to see if they are in the same mess as us," Taji commanded. Hello. They had already been on edge since their village decided to join this world war, and this sudden invasion had already sent nearly all of his soldiers and even him into a panic. Taji took a deep breath to control his emotions as soon as the young girl left. It wouldn't be good if he lost his cool in such a desperate situation. In just 3 words, Taji encapsulated their entire sentiment. What a mess. She had done everything she was told to do, including killing a few Chunin squads and sabotaging regional communication throughout the entire region. It had not been easy, but for a former assassin, it was possible. Akeno watched with bated breath as she saw a fire of panic, fear, anger, and desperation begin to spread throughout an entire nation. Standing calmly on the tall tree's branch next to her, Naruto's cool, calculating eyes watched with profound satisfaction as his own scheme began to bear fruit. What's his ultimate objective? To annihilate the 5 great countries? Can you recreate Uzu? Build an empire? Get the Uzumaki justice? Win peace by going to war? Akeno would follow and support Naruto no matter what he did, but she simply couldn't understand this shinobi, and these were only the beginning of the countless questions that consumed her thoughts. She was aware of Naruto's strength, but his ability to think strategically and be sly had always been his greatest strength. Akeno, you see, it's not that hard to bring about change in this world. All you need is the will to do so, Naruto said in a cynical tone. Akeno smirked as he looked at the world in front of him and said, "The ninja world will not crumble so easily to your whims. Something that's supposed to die and doesn't, will eventually rot away, whether it's a man or nation." Naruto turned around, but Akeno stayed motionless. They were silent for a few seconds before she spoke. "Is it finished?" Naruto grinned and closed his eyes. "I'm just getting started." Since Uzu's fall, a pair of dark eyes had been watching the red-headed Uzumaki. Initially motivated by the desire to hunt his prey, but soon after, Konoha Shinobi took care of that. His curiosity overcame him, and he continued to follow the boy, observing his changes. The boy named Naruto had completely embraced the change rather than hating their gloomy world like a brat. Despite Naruto's youth and lack of strength, the man could see that the Uzumaki boy had a mind that could compete with even the most seasoned shinobi. The man who was now watching him had finally matched the boy's ideology, and he grinned with satisfaction as he saw the chaos sweeping through Fire Nation. Curiously, the man thought, he truly is chaos incarnate. The man spoke for the first time after hearing Naruto's final statement and seeing the boy and his lackey leave. "Humans are so interesting." Minato Namikaze sat numbly on one of the big trees inside the Forest of Death, isolated from the outside world. Her eyes focused on the picture of a young boy in a mask, with a little cross in the bingo book beneath it, a sign Konoha had just updated. The Shadow. Although Naruto was listed in the bingo book as a mere chunin, there was a warning at the bottom about the boy's ability to surprise and turn tables, and he had always been proud of this quality that his son had inherited from him. He always liked the nickname that his son had earned for himself over the years. The father knew that was not the case, even though all the evidence pointed to Naruto's death. One could argue that Minato's delusion was a coping mechanism for his grief, and he would have agreed if it hadn't been for his final exchange with the boy. Since he was not permitted to visit Uzu, Minato had attempted to communicate with his son via letters over the years since their split. The letter with a few words written on it that Minato was holding in his other hand was the only response Naruto had ever given over the years. Every day, the Namikaze were plagued by words. Even when I was in a crowd, I was always alone. He could only imagine the kind of life his son had led that had caused him to say such terrible things. Those words were more painful than any wound, sharper than any blade. Nevertheless, the big eyes that gazed at him from the bingo book photo cried out with ambition. He could still clearly recall that one-on-one talk he had with his boy. Rewind. A few months before, standing in one of the marshes around Uzu, the guard Chunin was utterly taken aback to see a Konoha Junin infiltrating their territory so stealthily, let alone his own father. Minato watched with patience the astonishment on his young son's face. Minato had effortlessly knocked out the two Chunin border patrol guards who were with Naruto and were now in front of the boy with unexpected speed. "Junin, what are you doing here?" With his tanto aimed at the blonde ninja, Naruto asked coldly. Minato winced. Those icy words were painful, but he knew in his heart that he deserved them, so he chose to be patient instead. "Are you aware of my identity?" With a hopeful look in his eyes, Minato asked. "According to my biological creator, you were the donor who made it possible for me to exist. Nothing more, nothing less," Naruto said, causing his father to recoil in surprise. Even though Minato had expected such a reaction when he came here, it still hurt to hear Naruto's words because they left very little room for interpretation as to what the boy was feeling deep down. Minato apologized and smiled sadly at his red-haired son, saying, "I suppose I earned that remark." Naruto did the unimaginable by lowering his tanto and letting out a sigh, even though his shockingly blue eyes were blazing with rage. Minato raised one eyebrow in response to Naruto's composed statement. "I give you this one chance to walk away, if only for the unfortunate fact that I exist because of you." The father asked inquisitively, "You think you can defeat me?" and was taken aback when the boy shook his head. "It would be foolish to assume so. However, that doesn't mean that I won't offer a valiant fight. I am a ninja of Uzu and you are illegally setting foot in my nation. It is my duty to stop you, no matter what relation we unfortunately share," logically stated Naruto. Minato grinned. The boy frowned as Minato stated bluntly, "It seems you are wiser than most people your age. Rest assured, I am not here to harm your nation. I came here to see you." Minato bowed his head in shame as Naruto flatly retorted, "There was no need for such a farce." Minato whispered, "You're my son, Naruto," and observed the boy's fists clenching tightly as he struggled to control his emotions. However, Minato felt the temperature dropping and the desire to kill began to grow. "Just don't. It has taken me years to understand and accept the reality of my life. I don't hold you guilty for what you did. Just like I am a ninja of my village, you are a ninja of your village. Soldiers are meant to serve nation first, then society, then their comrades, and if it is possible then themselves in the end," said Naruto with conviction. Minato's eyes were filled with pride as he looked at his son. Minato praised Naruto, saying, "You've become an admirable ninja, Naruto." The boy paused at those words. Spite of the bitterness, Minato only needed to see the odd expression that briefly appeared in Naruto's eyes. The father's heart was relieved of a heavy burden. His son was merely uninterested in his father and did not despise him. Minato could attempt to accept that. "I came here to congratulate you for passing the Chunin exams and acing them as well. You are a Chunin now. I know I have no right to even speak with you. Yet I wanted to wish you luck in your life," said Minato intently. Naruto excused himself. "You don't have," but the father held up his hand. Minato noticed Naruto growing more alert as she knelt down and set a scroll on the ground. He secretly rejoiced that his son had maintained his vigilance to this day. The quality of a fine shinobi was that. "I know I have failed you, Naruto, and there is nothing I can say or do that can make up for it, but if you're ever in trouble, open this scroll," told Minato. Naruto questioned skepticism, "And why would I do that?" and noticed a melancholy smile spreading across the father's face. "I am your father, Naruto. Despite everything, I love you with everything in my heart." Naruto's icy, disdainful gaze faltered, and the boy hastily sealed those shocking blue eyes. He aimed his tanto away from Uzu and in the other direction. "You should go," Naruto muttered. Minato gave a nod. Despite the fact that only the Uzukage knew that Minato was the boy's father, he began to walk with a heavy heart. Even in Konoha, Kushina had kept this fact a closely guarded secret. The tall blonde then stopped and turned to face his son, who was making his way back to his unconscious comrades, after a question in his heart surfaced. Minato asked inquisitively, "Why do you fight, Naruto?" and the boy halted. The young red-headed boy looked up at the starry sky and the bright, shining moon, his back to his father. "To gain the strength to freely accomplish my dreams. One could also say that it's the power not to take orders from people whom I despise or don't agree with, to be the master of my own life." Those words left Minato unable to speak. It was his moment to look at his son in astonishment. No one realized how much Minato Namikaze had changed as a result of those words. His dream was born because of them. Because he had been weak and defenseless as a mere Chunin all those years ago, he was unable to retain custody of his own son and was unable to spare Kushina from such suffering. Minato had been helpless in comparison to the Kages who had made the choices. And Minato Namikaze had vowed to the world and to himself on that day. Naruto, I don't know where you are right now, but one day, I'll win the entire universe for you. The Namikaze stood back up and began to leave after saying those resolute words. He would ensure that Konoha emerged as the real winner of the world war that had begun, which would eventually open the door for him to realize his dreams. Minato was certain of one thing, though, and that was that one day, he would see his son again. In her gentle hands, Kushina had been lovingly handling the picture of her little son. She had just received a picture from the Uzukage of Naruto wearing his Chunin uniform, with a face mask over his face and a tanto fixed on his back. He was very attractive. She did not, however, miss the picture's icy, lifeless eyes that gazed at her. The sands of time also erased the fact that those eyes belonged to someone who had never known love. She was now facing a dedicated and resolute assassin whose sole purpose in life was to serve Uzu. For the sake of the village, live and die. Her son had taken that oath when he put on that uniform. She did not want him on such a violent and sinister path, but it had come to pass. She didn't seem to have made an effort to distance herself from him. On the contrary, she had sent him numerous letters, photos of herself and Minato, and other gifts on his birthday. And all she got in return was silence, all of these years up until the loss of the most valuable item in her wretched life was the most severe curse she had ever placed on her fate as a Jinchuriki. She threw away Naruto, the only positive thing that had ever happened to her. She could have exerted more effort and fought harder too. Her son would still be alive today if she had taken that action. Naruto had no family and lived a lonely life as a result of her and Minato's mistakes. Ultimately, he passed away by himself. She could still clearly recall that gloomy evening when her child was forcibly removed from her by a group of Anbu. A teenage Minato had also been standing next to Jiraiya, and the Hokage and Uzukage had watched the exchange with a totally professional expression on their faces. In contrast to Kushina, he had his eyes closed and was not crying. Despite her cries for assistance, he never glanced at her because his fists had been clenched so tightly. Naruto's sobbing voice was the last thing she remembered from that gloomy night before something struck her and darkness descended. Now, her sole purpose in life was to eliminate those responsible for the death of her only son. She would wreak havoc on the 3 cowardly villages that had destroyed her clan, her people, her village, and her son with all of her strength and hatred. She had been radiating a killing intent that caused the wooden walls to crack, and if it hadn't been for the quick knocks on her door, the situation would have gotten worse. With a growl, she rose and made her way to the door. Hadn't she warned those obnoxious Anbu not to bother her unless there was a mission? I told you to leave me alone. When Kushina noticed the man standing at her doorway with a broad, naive smile on his face, she was unable to finish her sentence. You. While lying steadily in the sand, Naruto stood atop one of the large sand dunes and looked at the massive structure in front of him. He was waiting for the bright moon in the sky to disappear for a while with Akeno by his side. And then they would launch their attack. Akeno had remained silent the entire time, speaking only in response to Naruto. 3 days had passed since their attacks in Fire Nation, and tonight 2 great nations would be engulfed in the flames of war. Why is this world so twisted, Akeno? If she hadn't been so alert at the moment, she would have missed his question. She was still shocked to hear those words from Naruto of all people. When Akeno turned to face him, he had a vulnerable expression on his face. I wonder if my actions will change anything in this world, or will they be just as meaningless as my own existence? Replied Naruto. Naruto. With a soft voice and a numb expression, Naruto stated, I want to achieve peace through force. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but I want to believe that what I am doing today will help in making people understand each other. He smiled slightly when Akeno said, I think people can only understand things that they've actually experienced. She smiled regretfully as Naruto admitted, I know what loneliness means, and now I know what happiness and sadness mean. What revenge means, what hatred means. But I don't know peace, Akeno. Neither does the world know, Akeno said, smiling encouragingly at him. Then I want to learn what peace is and teach it to the world as well. That's why even if the world rejects me, I'll keep on fighting, stated Naruto. When Akeno softly clasped her hand in his, Naruto blinked. A strange light was burning in her eyes as he turned to face her. When she turned back to face him, he froze. Then let's fight together. To learn peace. They both nodded firmly, and Akeno was taken aback when Naruto drew her close to him and embraced her. She touched his back with her hands. I'm never letting you go again. When she heard him say that, she felt so content and happy that words could not express how she felt. She could only attempt to imagine Naruto's feelings because she was aware of the horror she had gone through when she was taken prisoner by those Konoha scum. He led their group of survivors, and although he may not publicly acknowledge it, he secretly felt that he was to blame for all of those fatalities. He was frequently mistaken for their team's strongest member. Although he was the weakest of the three, he was a shinobi. The closest thing Naruto had to a family was Nagato and Akeno. As he gently broke the embrace, Akeno teased, "You aren't getting rid of me that easily, Naruto." He calmly stood back and looked at the massive Suna Dam in front of them. One of Suna's most important resources, the modern invention provided almost 20% of its population with a means of subsistence. Furthermore, Naruto understood the repercussions of attacking this location directly. His hold on his tanto faltered for a few seconds as he tried to picture the kind of pain he would be causing this world. Reforms, no matter how great or small, are never painless or without sacrifices. Akeno took a deep breath and saw his shaking stop. Naruto looked up at the now darkened sky with his blue eyes. "You guys may be satisfied with this world, I'm not." Naruto Uzumaki, wearing Konoha Anbu's uniform, put a bird mask on his face after saying those resolute words. With a final look at his partner, he rushed in the direction of the dam. Biting her thumb and then slamming her right hand into the sand, Akeno swiftly executed a series of hand seals. Kachiyose no Jutsu, summoning technique. The vulture carried the silver-haired girl higher and higher as she swiftly rose into the dark sky. As Akeno pointed her hand forward, the big creature blended in with the night sky with ease. Akeno put her hands together and said, "Altras, we'll help him, sink with me." The big predatory bird responded by cawing, indicating that it accepted the directive. The bird began wildly flapping its wings as soon as Akeno began to channel her chakra into the aerial summon. On the ground, two Suna Chunin who were watching the dam's perimeter noticed a sizable sandstorm developing in the distance. The senior Chunin gave the order, "Tell the others to take shelter." "Will do." "Man, what a mess. I'll also inform the engineers to take protective measures to safeguard the water," said the other Chunin. "You do that. Inform the guards not to mess around in this storm, they can be deadly." "Roger." The senior Chunin turned around as soon as the younger Chunin left to carry out his orders, only to see a human figure appear out of the darkness. Slash! Before he could yell a warning, the Chunin's head was severed, leaving a permanent look of horror in his eyes. As soon as the blood of the now dead Chunin began to soak into the sand, Naruto hurried to hide behind the dam's walls. The majority of people were unaware that he had been chosen as one of the applicants to join Uzu's first Anbu force. Aside from the shinobi selected for this unit, only the Izukage and his small group of aides were aware of this fact. Regretfully, the village was destroyed and their training was never finished. He pondered what might have happened if Uzu had created an Anbu force in the final months of its existence. It was one of their serious mistakes. Notwithstanding those errors, Naruto still possessed the knowledge and abilities necessary to carry out assassination and infiltration missions. He would use his talents tonight. 4 shadow clones of him materialized next to him as he raised 2 fingers. They all had the same calculating, icy expression on their faces. "The enemy is taking shelter from the sandstorm Akeno is creating. But she can't maintain it for long, we only have a 5-minute window to execute our mission," told the real Naruto. "Should we go in and eliminate the enemy forces? They'll be easy to kill now that they are hiding in shelters," suggested a single clone. Another clone cautioned, "That would take too much time. The longer we take, the more Akeno's chakra will get used up. We must keep her in mind as well," told a different clone. "If we attract too much attention, then the Suna forces will follow us, and we'll simply get trapped between theirs and approaching Konoha forces," warned the final clone. Their original creator pulled 4 scrolls out of his pouch and gave one to each of the clones before they could continue their conversation. Naruto pointed to the designated points on the map and said, "Spread out in all directions, place them across these points." Now, in order to achieve their goals, the clones swiftly saluted and began running covertly in various directions. Naruto positioned his own scroll close to one of the enormous walls of the dam. Then he touched the communication device in his ear with his finger. Naruto inquired anxiously, "Akeno, how are you doing?" Akeno made her friend grimace as she insisted, "It is taking more chakra than I expected, but I can go on." Understood. He cautiously searched the area for any signs of Suna forces. As soon as he severed the connection, he noticed that the sandstorm that Akeno was creating with the aid of her summon was gradually approaching the dam. This had been sufficient to persuade the Suna forces that they were not being attacked and that they had taken refuge in peace because it was a real occurrence rather than a fantasy. Since Konoha had been assembling large armed battalions close to their borders, the Sand Village had been on edge for the past few days. But since they were allies, Sand Village hadn't started an official conflict. Naruto thought grimly, with this, all bets would be off the table. War will be inevitable. A part of him knew deep down that what he was doing was wrong, and he didn't like it. He refused to be a part of a world that was stagnant and where humanity was out of control, but he was unable to stop. There was no denying that war would always exist. He could reduce the frequency of its occurrences and its necessity. Ninjas were mercenaries who battled for their own desires as well as for money and resources. The majority of the ninja were dishonorable and worse than scum, with the exception of a small minority. His life's work was to eradicate these war-mongering thugs and replace them with nations, militaries, and people who were more responsible, kind, and understanding of one another. He knew it wasn't impossible, but it was easier said than done, and he was prepared to pay for all sins in order to achieve that peaceful dream, if it were possible. All charges set. Over the communication channel, his clones' voices sounded like the god's hammer coming down from the sky. Slaying people was simple when you were out of control, but it is very challenging when you are fully in control of yourself. Naruto was the only one who knew this fact. Even as an assassin, he had killed people, and whenever his dark powers went awry, many had died. Now, however, he was going to do something far more destructive and far more significant. He was provoking a conflict between two countries that would result in millions of deaths, devastation, grief, and loss. He was ultimately no different from the ninja thugs he detested. He was shocked to learn that, as long as he was safe, he had been content to live in such a perverse world. However, he had also changed when that had happened. It helped him realize how wrong he had been, how wrong the world was, and how urgently things needed to change. In a sense, Nagato had been correct. He couldn't comprehend these things until he had gone through that suffering. People needed to acknowledge their mistakes like his in order to comprehend one another. He would attempt to teach the world its mistakes, just as the massacre of his clan had taught Naruto his own. He immediately began to back away from the boundaries of the dam, and eventually he slowly raised 2 fingers. Boom! He caught a glimpse of the building's gradual collapse out of the corner of his eye, with the water spreading in all directions. His ears rang with the cries of the appalled Suna ninjas and civilians. At the end, Akeno had been waiting for him. The sandstorm and her summons had been halted while she observed the devastation they had caused to a whole country. Akeno muttered, "We finally did it, didn't we?" "Yeah," Naruto said, staring at the pitch-black sky. "If you fight, people die. If you don't, even then they die. I guess it's true. There's no right or wrong in this world," said Akeno. Naruto's sensory abilities alerted him to the impending arrival of something enormous, and his eyes grew wide. His worst nightmares came true as he turned around and swiftly brought his tanto forward to deflect a blow from the smiling man. "You're damn right, brats." Naruto's heart stirred when his blade made contact for the first time. The Uzumaki realized something as the sparks flew everywhere and Akeno gasped in surprise. The individual in front of him was a monster. At that moment, Naruto's eyes fell upon the man, brandishing a long, sharp sword while wearing the Kiri Hunter ninja uniform. It was odd that the man's skin was blue, and his face was hidden behind a Hunter nin mask. He noticed that the man was smiling and flashing his shark-like teeth through the tiny openings in his mask. Additionally, the chakra level. This is insane, Naruto thought horribly. This ninja's sheer chakra levels were comparable to a bloodied Kage's, and his power. He had a taste of it when the Kiri ninja sent him reeling away with a mere grunt. When Akeno realized what was happening, she pulled out her own tanto and let loose a ferocious battle cry on the opponent. In horror, Naruto yelled, "Akeno, stop!" The boy sensed the man's strength as he struck Akeno with his sword. Naruto felt as though time had stopped, and he was horrified to see his close friend rush toward her inevitable demise. Slash! Along with the sound of metal striking flesh, crimson liquid flew across the chilly desert. 2 suffocating cries, one of horror and one of pain, were heard. The Kiri ninja continued to gaze at the scene with a startled smile. Sand flew all around Akeno as she crashed hard to the ground. She stopped rolling and looked at him in embarrassment. Naruto. When she heard the sound of his broken tanto hitting the sand, tears filled her eyes. The red fluid poured out over Naruto's left shoulder, creating a wider splatter of blood. However, the majority of Naruto angrily hissed, "Stay focused, Akeno. This one's out of your league." When Akeno saw his entire left eye destroyed, he gasped in shock. Naruto unleashed a powerful chakra blast that caused their opponent to leap away, gaining some distance. As Naruto bit back the excruciating pain from his ripped flesh, he vowed, "I won't let you harm her." It was worth it, even though his left eye was totally destroyed. Even after exerting all of his strength, Naruto was only just able to put himself between Akeno and the lethal sword, demonstrating the Kiri ninja's immense power. His eye was destroyed and a significant portion of his body was torn apart when the weapon cleaved right through his tanto, which he had hoped would have blocked the incoming strike. Akeno came to stand next to him, sobbing as she looked pitifully at what he had given up for her. Curiously, the Kiri ninja remarked, "That's some speed you've got there, brat. Not to mention guts, you must really care about this girl." "Bastard." Akeno growled. The silver-haired Kunoichi was on the verge of charging when Naruto blocked her path by placing his injured arm in front of her. Naruto admitted, "You're no match for him, even I don't think I am." He could still see the disbelief in her eyes as his comrade winced. Although he found it difficult to accept this harsh reality, the truth remained the same. He and Akeno were Chunin regardless of their strength. And this man had much more experience, strength, and speed. Naruto sensed that their opponent could easily wipe the floor with them if he used all of his strength. The combined chakra of Naruto and Akeno was like a drop in an ocean compared to the Kiri ninja's immense chakra. Naruto felt outclassed for the first time in his life. He had not only lost an eye, but he had also been confronted with a painful reality. The Kiri ninja calmly uttered, "You're weak," which caused Naruto to grit his teeth in agony and annoyance. Naruto could sense Akeno's rage next to him. She was a hothead, and it was starting to irritate her to see her comrade being scolded in this way. She was unable to perceive or comprehend the serious danger they were in. She also had a very low chakra. She must have suffered greatly after calling forth her vulture and causing that enormous sandstorm. As he reached one harsh conclusion, the gears in his mind churned. Naruto closed his remaining eye, a faint smirk twitching his lips. He let out a long breath and turned to face the girl with the silver hair. Softly, Naruto said, "Take care of Nagato." When she saw the expression in his eyes, her eyes widened, but her vision went black because his hand had already made contact with her neck. After catching her falling form, Naruto turned to face his opponent, who was observing them with interest. The man smiled and Naruto said, "I get the feeling you want a good fight." Praised the Kiri ninja, saying, "True. Glad to see your cunning has not dimmed in the past few days. You are interesting ninja." Naruto squinted. The meaning of those cryptic words was straightforward. Now that he considered it, the three large villages that had attacked Uzu could have sent hunter ninja to pursue the few Uzumaki who had managed to escape the carnage. It proved that he still had a long way to go in terms of strength and vision. He was still a young, strong Chunin. A clone of himself materialized at his side, and he sealed his hands. The clone nodded briefly, then took the sleeping Akeno in his arms and began to back away toward Konoha's boundaries. As if reading his query, the Kiri ninja smiled, and Naruto watched in curiosity as his opponent did nothing to halt the escape. With a mocking smile from the young boy, the Kiri ninja stated bluntly, "I have no interest in weaklings. There is no human in your ragtag group of survivors that interests me, except you." "Oh, I'm flattered," sarcastically remarked Naruto. With a bored tone, the ninja asked, "So, you ready to die now?" When Naruto heard that question, he arched an inquisitive eyebrow. Naruto asked, "And what makes you think that?" and noticed his adversary frowning. As if it were that clear, the Kiri ninja said, "You sent the girl away in a noble yet foolish way and are standing here to face me, thereby buying her some time." As he quickly moved to one side, the hunter ninja's eyes widened, but it was still insufficient because a sharp object ripped through his leg. The Kiri ninja glared at his opponent as blood spilled once more on the endless desert. With his enemy's blood now visible on the kunai in his hand, Naruto remarked icily, "You assume too much." Even as blood poured from his injured left leg, which had a nasty cut, the hunter ninja exclaimed, "You live up to your reputation, Shadow." With a mocking bow from his opponent, Naruto said, "It's impolite to not introduce yourself." Kisame Hoshigaki. Naruto's eyebrow went up. If he could manage to escape from here, he would have to watch out for this one from now on. He needed to be especially careful now that he was down to one eye. To Kisame's dismay, the remaining wounds on his body gradually began to mend. Picking up Akeno's tanto that she had left behind, Naruto swore, "I'm not gonna die tonight." Kisame responded, bold words for a brat with one eye, and let out a monstrous amount of ki. Kisame saw something unexpected instead of the brat trembling and falling to his knees. The Kiri ninja saw the dark shrouds of chakra being released from the boy's body as the young Uzumaki began to laugh uncontrollably. Naruto's tanto began to glow with strange seals, and soon a bright light surrounded the weapon. It died after a short while, and to Kisame's surprise, the little tanto had grown into a broadsword. Kisame thought slyly, Uzumaki sure created very interesting toys. Kisame had to admit for the first time that the ninja before him was not your typical one. Any lesser ninja would have been frightened by Naruto's power alone, which was comprised of pure hatred and malice. In fact, it had the opposite effect on Kisame. With a sudden surge of energy, Kisame lunged forward and slashed the boy's torso cleanly with his sword. Instead, blood spurted from his own back, and he gasped in shock and pain as he skidded forward. When the startled hunter ninja turned around again, he saw Naruto standing in a totally different pose, with the red fluid coursing through Kisame's body on his sword. Naruto calmly remarked, "Looks like I'll have to go all out against you." "Interesting." Kisame smiled. Naruto sensed a lot of chakra being collected as Kisame clasped his hands together. The blue-colored man appeared just in time and launched a fierce attack. Suiten. Mazurapa, water style, violent water wave. The Kiri ninja created a monstrous water wave that was at least 30 feet long and the same width, and it was directed directly at the young boy. The power of this man was truly amazing, Naruto thought, to think he can create so much water even in the midst of a desert. Hoshigaki Kisame, you. The Uzumaki Chunin stepped forward and held out both hands to the approaching target, grinning contentedly. He smirked as he closed his one eye and looked for the force behind the assault. When his attack halted in the middle, Kisame scowled. "What?" exclaimed Kisame, startled, because he was now being attacked by his own attack. Words could not describe Kisame's current state of shock. He had never experienced such a thing in his life. Such a move was beyond the capabilities of even a bloody cage. A Kekai Genkai. Kisame thought horrifiedly. In a desperate defensive move, he quickly channeled a significant amount of his chakra to create and launch another similar water wave. A tiny lake was formed in the middle of the desolate desert as a result of the two attacks' wildly violent collisions. As hundreds of droplets of water fell from the sky, Kisame quickly raised his sword. Metal hitting metal, sparks flying, this boy. Kisame shouted, "Take this," and slashed his sword directly at the boy's head. Once more, the boy just vanished and reappeared in a totally different direction, staring at Kisame without emotion. "What the hell is going on?" Kisame asked anxiously. When Naruto began to charge back at him with terrifying speed, his eyes widened. Kisame's gaze shifted to the left and right to follow the boy's movements, and then to the right again when their blades began colliding. Whoever had named this boy Shadow had been right on the money. Since Kisame was currently surrounded by images of Naruto, he was certain that he would have died by now if it weren't for his years of experience on the battlefield. In the meantime, Naruto was attempting to destroy his opponent with every move in his toolbox. It was reckless how much chakra he was using at the moment. He was already mediocre at ninjutsu and had only half the chakra reserves of a typical Uzumaki. He was certain that he was going to lose in a fight of sheer strength and ninjutsu. Kisame was unaware, however, that Naruto's greatest weakness was also his greatest strength, since his Kekai Genkai enabled him to use his opponent's attacks against them. As long as they were under Naruto's control, he didn't really need ninjutsu. Akeno was proficient in both medical arts and genjutsu, while Nagato was good at sealing. He received intensive instruction in a single art: chakra management. This ability not only helped him manage his dangerous power, but it also gave him the moniker, the Shadow. And based on Kisame's increasingly desperate attempts, it was clear that Naruto's special move was overwhelming him, and he doubted that anyone other than a cage-level ninja, Anbu, or someone with a Sharingan could keep up with his movements. The only negative aspect of this incredible speed was how much chakra it used, and Naruto didn't have much left over. Unbeknownst to Kisame, Naruto was also growing weary, and fighting with only one eye was a real pain in the ass. After wildly clashing their swords, the two fighters leapt away from one another. Kisame had multiple small and large cuts all over his body, while Naruto had collapsed to one knee, his face dripping with perspiration and his mouth releasing a harsh breath. Naruto's young body suddenly experienced excruciating pain, and he let out a shrill scream in rage. "This speed is too much for your muscles to handle, are they?" the boy winced as Kisame asked in a knowing manner. Naruto angrily declared, "They are strong enough to kill you. Maybe, but you'll end up killing yourself, and that will be an annoyance," Kisame stated bluntly. Even though it was the truth, Naruto chose not to acknowledge it and stayed silent. When Kisame sheathed his sword, he was in complete shock. "What are you doing?" With hesitation, Naruto asked. Kisame flatly retorted, "I gain nothing from killing you now or dying uselessly in a suicidal battle. I am unable to comprehend. Isn't it your task to find and eliminate the last of the Uzumaki?" Asked inquisitively, and Naruto nodded in response. "It is a mission of Kiri, not my own," Kisame grinned and acknowledged. There was something in this man's eye that Naruto was well aware of, so he lowered his own sword out of genuine curiosity. "You're not content with this perverted world either, are you?" With knowledge, Naruto inquired. As Naruto's sword changed back into the original Tanto and he sheathed it, Kisame merely smiled back. "I have observed your behavior, your determination, and your strength. You may be weaker than me, but you're much more sly, don't you think?" Asked Kisame with a smile. Naruto uttered the enigmatic phrase. "Maybe, tell me something. You initiated the third great ninja war, but why?" Kisame inquired inquisitively. This time, Naruto grinned genuinely. Even with his allies, Akano and Nagato might never comprehend his vision or the journey he had taken to realize it, but maybe this man. "Kisame, there is no such thing as right or wrong in this world. Power is all that matters," Naruto stated candidly. "The ability to rule?" Kisame, sounding a little let down, suggested. "Those are a child's or an innocent person's dreams. I want change, not to rule or get involved in such pointless activities," Naruto admitted. "Is that the reason you started the Konohasuna War?" "Yes, I think my plan will result in change. Kill, steal, borrow, threaten, bribe, charm. I'm ready to use every method to achieve my objective," Naruto declared with pride. Naruto gave Kisame a menacing stare before he could speak or ask a question. "Those are my objectives." "What interests me are your objectives. The fact that you watched me and my behavior, followed my group, and are prepared to change your goal for something else. What, Kisame Hoshigaki, do you really want?" "Seriously?" Naruto asked. Kisame remarked dryly, "You are quite perceptive for someone your age," and was met with a severe glare. "As I previously stated, ambition and power are the only things that count. Either you are a sheep or a lion. Which are you, seriously?" Naruto asked. The boy narrowed his eyes suspiciously as Kisame said in a mysterious way, "Let's say our visions are similar to an extent." "Not good enough." The boy was obstinate and persistent, and rightfully so, Kisame grinned. The man in front of Naruto described his own dream in great detail over the next few moments, and when Kisame finished, the Kiri ninja gave him a direct look. Kisame admitted, "I'd like to join this revolution you have started. And I'm correct in thinking that this conflict served as a test for me." Smirking, Naruto inquired. "Yes. Furthermore, why did you release the girl? Give me a truthful response," Kisame said gravely, his gaze demanding only the truth. Despite letting out a sigh, Naruto chose to explain. "Although I did release her to protect her, it was more because she would only obstruct my path. It would have been risky to fight you and protect her at the same time, and I had already made a lot of sacrifices." Kisame laughed as Naruto said bluntly, "There's no point in repeating the same mistake." Kisame taunted, "Too bad you lost your eye before that," but stopped laughing when Naruto smiled at him in a puzzled manner, his eyes sparkling with mischievous intentness. "Oh, did I?" inquired Naruto enigmatically. The scar on Naruto's skin, which would likely heal with time, was the only indication that the eye had sustained such a devastating blow. Kisame was shocked and amazed when the boy reopened the destroyed eye and saw that it was completely healed. "I can see why people were scared of your clan," Kisame said drearily. "I like letting them scold me for being weak and young, but killing me is not as simple as people believe." The expressions on their faces when the roles are reversed are pretty entertaining, said Naruto slyly, receiving a nod of respect from Kisame. "You're right. What is your response, then?" Kisame looked the boy in the eye and demanded. For the next few minutes, Naruto stared at the Kiri ninja, and they both stared into each other's eyes, trying to decide if the other was worthy of their trust. "In Kiri, become my eyes and ears. To be clear, neither I nor you serve each other. We are accomplices," Naruto smirked. "What if I turn on you?" With a cunning smile, Kisame challenged. If he thought the boy would become agitated or upset, he was taken aback when Naruto simply shrugged. Naruto slyly remarked, "To each his own, I guess, it's a free world." Kisame said suspiciously, "I find it hard to believe that you are so careless about such an important matter." "It works both ways, Kisame. If you are smart enough, then you'll understand that if you betray me, then you'll simply live a worthless life in this world and become the very thing you hate. I have no need of people who are sheep or snakes. What I desire are the few warriors who are my equals with the power and ambition to accomplish their goals. Are you that man, Kisame? Asked Naruto with pride. Kisame could not speak. He had encountered every type of ninja in his life. He had encountered the brave, the noble, the cowardly, the selfish, the evil, the power-hungry, the greedy, and the selfish. However, he had never once encountered someone who was an equal. A person who had similar goals and was resolute enough to see them through to completion, a soul who refused to bow or expect to be bowed to. However, Kisame felt a stirring in his heart as he gazed at this young boy. This boy had a captivating glow in his eyes, and there was something inspiring about him. Perhaps this boy would have been the person Kisame would have preferred to fight alongside. With a slight smile, Kisame thought, humans are so interesting. With a slight smirk, he asked, looking the boy in the eye. Kisame mockingly asked, so, what is your group of visionaries called? But Naruto saw no malice in the words, just plain curiosity. After realizing that he still hadn't thought of a name for his group, Naruto paused to reflect. He needed something that matched the change he wished to bring about in the world, because naming them after his clan would be offensive and draw too much attention. The clouds were gradually fading away with the vanishing moon, signaling the start of a new day, and he noticed a slight red glow in the sky. Naruto turned to face the smiling shark-like man in front of him and smiled, saying something that would soon rock the ninja world to its core. Akatsuki. A lone young boy sat quietly on one of the many trees that can be found in Fire Nation's dense forests. The lands were exposed to the afternoon sun's rays, and the only thing shielding him from the intense heat and bright sunlight was the shade that the trees offered. But his mind was in a completely different place. Even though it had only been nearly 30 minutes since that fateful day, the boy's entire life had completely changed. If one were to look at Naruto at this moment, they would see a person who is extremely frustrated, with his fists clenched, his eyebrows deeply furrowed, and his eyes narrowed as he stares at the shining Tonto that is sitting in his lap. He wasn't particularly bothered by the afternoon heat or the sporadic sounds of untamed animals. You're weak. Every second, those words kept reverberating in his heart and mind. He had been this close, and his fists clenched even more, almost shattering his skin. It was humiliating to even consider that he had almost died yesterday at the hands of an unidentified ninja. He had always thought of himself as a competent ninja, not particularly strong but competent enough. He had been rudely shocked by his encounter with Kisame yesterday because of these beliefs. He had lived, indeed, however, it didn't matter. It was worse to just survive than to lose. It brought to mind the time he had to leave Uzu as his home and fellow citizens burned and his beloved Azukage and his small group of warriors engaged in a suicidal conflict. He was always upset, but he had never displayed it to his friends or the surviving kids. He was never able to sleep at night because of the cries of his dying clan. Somehow, the others had come to terms with this development, but he was unable to. He refused to. He had vowed to get revenge. He had vowed to bring about change in this perverse world. But he was too frail to realize his aspirations. He wasn't even deserving of taking on an experienced Kage if he couldn't even hold a stalemate against a hunter ninja. Using his covert abilities, he had managed to sneak back into Fire Nation after escaping Suna. Fighters were gathering on both sides of borders as a result of his successful plan, and war would soon break out between them. What made him feel defeated, though? He had spent hours sitting here trying to think about what had happened yesterday over and over again. To Naruto's relief, he had convinced the shark-like man by putting on a brave front in front of Kisame. Since he was a shinobi, he had no fear of dying. However, he felt that it was rather pointless to die a meaningless death without realizing his dreams. Strength. He recalled saying this word to Kisame, and his eyes grew wide. He clenched his teeth as he recalled how powerless he felt when he witnessed Akeno coming dangerously close to death, Konoha Anbu murdering his people, and Uzu being destroyed. As his rage poured through his heart, the leaves all around him began to wither and turn to ashes. Never, ever again. All of the world-changing great leaders had been strong individuals. Even those who were unable to realize their dreams had grown strong enough on their own to ensure that, at the very least, their names and ideals were remembered. Uchiha Madara and Hashirama Senju were the prime examples of this fate. There was no question in Naruto's mind that he was not even remotely like Hashirama. Too much rage, too much desire for power, too much hatred, and too much regret burned in his heart for him to become such a kind man. He was perhaps in the middle, not quite as insane as Madara. He did, however, admire each of them since they gained sufficient power. While the other was unable to achieve his objectives and make a difference in the world, he left a legacy that increased the notoriety of his clan. And that was it. He required power in order to achieve his objectives, exact revenge on his clan, and avoid feeling powerless or witnessing the deaths of his friends. He needed to gain strength, intelligence, and cunning. He would require not just personal power but also financial, diplomatic, military, and political clout to effect the change he wanted. He had to ensure the survival of his remaining clansmen at the same time. Since his objectives would place him directly in the midst of dangerous situations and conflicts, he was unsure of how long he would live. At the very least, he had to ensure the survival of his people and his friends. And he needed to get stronger for that. He picked up his tanto firmly and his eyes hardened. He would learn from this embarrassing experience and get better instead of dwelling on the past. There was no other option. He began his lengthy journey back to their secret hideout, where his friends were waiting for him, with those thoughts in mind. Hours ago, his clone informed him that Akeno was safe by dispelling itself. However, the silver-haired girl had regained consciousness by the time the clone arrived at the hiding place, and the expression in her eyes had vowed to commit bloody murder if he ever returned alive. He let out a moan. As he began to jump across trees, Naruto muttered, "This is going to be quite an unpleasant day." Kushina gazed at the young boy at her dining table with curiosity. Young Obito Uchiha was the epitome of a vivacious young man, slurping his way through the ramen noodles in his bowl with a silly smile on his face. When she noticed that the boy was still wearing the goggles she had purchased for him, she couldn't help but smile. It was only a modest birthday gift, but it warmed her to see the boy treasure it to this day. However, it also caused her heart to sag a little. Additionally, she became slightly more resentful of Minato. Because the boy seated before her was her ex-lover's younger son. The black-haired Uchiha, who was a year younger than Naruto, was the epitome of what her son Naruto might have become if she had been more determined to maintain custody of him. She still found it difficult to believe that Obito, like Naruto, was born unexpectedly. Despite his skill, Minato was undoubtedly reckless in some situations, and she couldn't help but shake her head in shock. She had lost her temper with Minato a few months after Naruto was taken from her, which caused their relationship to end. The memory of Minato's misery at losing both his son and his true love was still fresh in her mind. Additionally, it had resulted in an inebriated evening with Makoto Uchiha. Kushina had been good friends with the Uchiha woman, who was 2 years younger than Kushina. However, Makoto was undoubtedly not happy with Kushina pointing the finger at Minato alone for their shared pain, as though he were in a different situation than she was. In retrospect, Kushina could see Makoto's point of view, even though she had felt deceived at the time. For the blonde Namikaze, the raven had always carried a torch. Obito was born as a result. Makoto and Minato never got married, and Minato had never truly loved him. However, she could see that he had taken on his unexpected new role and assisted Makoto in raising the boy who was seated in front of her. This was the real cause of her animosity and resentment toward Minato and, to a lesser degree, herself. She almost started crying again when she looked at the photo of her own son. Even though she cared for Obito and was genuinely happy for him to have a happy childhood, she realized that the boy had everything her son had not. Furthermore, Obito's very presence made her think of what her own son might have been rather than the emotionless shinobi in the photo who gazed at her. Naruto was the darkness if Obito was the light. For her, it was as easy as that. She was thankful to have this little fool in her life in spite of everything. Since Makoto had been so gracious to let her into Obito's life, her friend had likely always been aware of the void left by Naruto's absence and had made an effort to fill it with Obito's presence. Though insufficient, it had given Kushina sufficient motivation to continue living in the hope of one day seeing her own son again. She had always wanted him to meet his father and his younger stepbrother. Unfortunately, it was never going to occur. The touch of a single finger stroking away the tears streaming down her cheeks finally snapped her out of her reverie, and a gentle hand was placed on her wrist. Unaware that she had begun crying once more, she found herself the object of Obito's anxious attention. "Are you okay?" Obito asked anxiously, his normally naive gaze fixed on her. It was not a good idea for Kushina to let her grief fall on this boy, so she said softly, "Yes, thank you, he was worthy of better." Obito shifted a little, and she could see he was frantically trying to decide. In fact, it made her think of Makoto, but the boy quickly changed his mind, and his resolute look was nearly identical to Minato's own. Obito cautiously said, "I don't think he's dead," which caused the redhead Jinchuriki to look surprised. Kushina noticed that the boy was staring at the picture of Naruto. Minato had always been truthful with his younger son and had told Obito that his older stepbrother existed. Unexpectedly, the Uchiha was thrilled rather than envious, and he had been nagging his parents for months to meet his sibling. Unfortunately, his wish was never fulfilled. That being said, Obito, like her, always dreamed of meeting this enigmatic older brother. Though he was young and kind-hearted, it was childish. His wish to embrace Naruto was the catalyst for Kushina's love for Obito and the development of their peculiar bond. He was the first to approach her as word spread throughout Konoha about Uzu's fall and the death of her clan. He had apologized for what had happened to her family and had even brought her ramen, which was a kind act of support. The fact that Obito had vowed not to exact revenge on the three cursed villages responsible for that heinous massacre greatly relieved Kushina. However, it was adorable that the boy pledged to drive out the cages. She, not Obito, had a duty to exact revenge on her clan. Her heart leapt when she heard him express optimism about Naruto's survival. Despite the improbable odds, it was the first time someone had said something like that. However, it also revealed another unsettling idea. Could Naruto really forgive her, Minato, and Konoha for leaving him and allowing Uzu to burn to ashes? Kushina only needed to gaze into the icy boy's eyes in the photo to know the answer. Using the nicknames she had given her boys, Kushina lamented, "I want to believe that too, Obi. But even if he's alive, I don't think Naru will want to come back after everything that has happened." She blinked. Although Obito was not her biological son, she recalled the years she had spent with him, watching him mature, and helping him gain strength, which demonstrated that even though he was not her biological child, she still thought of him as one of her own. Adorable, defiant, and, "That's stupid," Obito screamed. As Obito himself called out the word she had in mind for him, she grinned. That was by no means to imply that he was stupid. In a sense, though, Obito had never witnessed the harsh reality of their shared world. However, his obstinate self persisted in believing in the tranquil world he had always imagined and refused to accept reality. Before the boy launched into one of his lengthy tirades, Kushina admonished, "Obi." Obito hesitantly said, "I don't understand, Oba-san. We're his family, sure we may fight but his place is with us, isn't it?" And she smiled in response. "He's a peculiar one, that boy. The Azukage always told me Naruto had always been different from others his age. He did make friends and has compassion for those he cares about. Yet he never forgave either me or his father for not being there for him, and rightly so. Imagine growing up as an orphan on your own despite having parents?" Kushina patiently asked. Obito winced. As he envisioned growing up alone without the affection of a family, the rebellious fire in his eyes waned significantly. Despite having parents, being completely dependent on oneself and facing the world alone every day was a curse. The youthful Uchiha came to terms with the tense relationship between his older sibling and his parents. The image of Naruto Uzumaki caught his attention. The boy had always remained a mystery to him. He had put a lot of effort into becoming a skilled ninja after learning that Naruto had won his Chunin tournament. Kushina truly missed her son, and Obito knew that no matter how hard he tried, he would never be able to fully fill that void, so he couldn't bear to see the sadness in her eyes. He had always received kindness and even a lot of spoiling from Kushina. She helped him hone his ninjutsu, gave him his amazing goggles, and, most importantly, she genuinely believed in and supported his ambition to become Hokage. She also introduced him to ramen. Kushina was taken aback when Obito took her hand and gazed directly into her eyes. "I'll bring him back to you, I promise," Obito uttered angrily, his eyes blazing with grim resolve. Kushina begged, not wanting to put such a heavy load on the shoulders of this young child. "Obi. You. Don't." However, Obito shook his head, having already made up his mind. "I won't accept anything less," Obito declared with confidence. "I'll drag him back to Konoha screaming if I have to." Even as she fought back the tears that were starting to well up in her eyes, Kushina sighed resignedly and said, "You've really set on this, aren't you? Till the end." Obito pledged. Kushina's heart began to rise with hope for the first time. She saw a picture of an older, sullen Naruto holding her and spending the rest of his life with his family. And she wondered as she met Obito's resolute gaze. "Maybe you'll succeed where I failed, Obi." Nagato was waiting for Naruto close to the edge of their little camp, which did not surprise him. In spite of the strong traps and seals they had placed in every direction, one of the three had to be on guard duty at all times. They hugged each other for a moment while his friend smiled at him wearily. Naruto smiled and Nagato sighed deeply. "You really like getting into trouble, don't you?" Nagato asked. Nagato lowered his head in shock as Naruto cheekily retorted, "Life wouldn't be as exciting without them." That bad? Inquired Naruto anxiously. It was obvious that Akeno had gone crazy if even Nagato didn't sound overly happy. After receiving a mild glare from his best friend, Nagato said in a dramatic manner, "I'll bury you afterwards, for old time's sake." "Oi! Shut up. I'm used to your reckless ways, but not Akeno. Why do you do this to her, Naruto?" Shilo. When Naruto gave him a chilly glare, Nagato winced. Naruto's hesitation in this matter was demonstrated by the fact that his friend even raised his hand to interrupt him. "I've said this before, I have no time for relationships. I care for her and would not hesitate to risk my life for her, but my dreams are different from hers," roared Naruto. Nagato asked knowingly, still after power, and was not shocked to get a proud nod. "You are free to choose a different path if you like. I don't want either of you to follow me just because we're friends," bluntly stated Naruto. Naruto grinned as Nagato assured him, "You know I've got your back no matter what. Same goes for Akeno." As Nagato sighed, Naruto admitted, "I'm thankful for that. It's just that I don't feel what Akeno feels for me." Nagato was teased, "Unfortunately, you two would have made a nice couple." Teme. Naruto grinned widely as Nagato reassured him, "Easy. I'll try to make her understand, but it'll take time, and you know how she is." Sincerely, Naruto said, "Thank you. She deserves better, although I don't have the heart to say this to her." Nagato looked at his friend with interest as a question came to him. Deciding to ask it, he looked him in the eye. "So what kind of girl would you like? I'm sure we can arrange something eventually," laughed Nagato. Naruto pouted and got a small laugh from his friend. "Now you're doing this on purpose," he said. "Humor me." Naruto wanted to object, but this was not the appropriate moment, and he also didn't want to bring up such a pointless subject. Although his friends were his closest supporters, they did not share his vision or his intense devotion to it. It annoyed him occasionally, but he didn't hold it against them. Although he acknowledged that the Kiri ninja was insane, he could understand why he felt a strange sense of new camaraderie with Kisame. And that was the reason Naruto valued the man so highly. His vision could be realized with the least amount of bloodshed and conflict. He didn't need big armies or epic wars. He would turn his dream into a reality with just time and a few like-minded people. However, based on the expression in Nagato's eyes, his friend was determined to get an answer and would not give up without one. And now more than ever, Naruto gave in because he would need Nagato to deal with Akeno. To save their group, it was preferable to have at least one of his closest friends support him. When Nagato smiled triumphantly, Naruto glared and said, "Fine," with fatigue. Nagato's eyes were watching his friend with a far more profound expression as Naruto delved into his thoughts to discover the qualities of his ideal mate. Naruto was unaware that Nagato was enlisting him in a covert experiment. Naruto's psyche had always been damaged because of something that was different. Today, Nagato was going to put his suspicions to the test. Naruto honestly said, "I don't know," as he was taken aback by his own lack of interest and clumsy response. Nagato was correct. He closed his eyes for a moment. Although the boy in front of him might seem like a typical person to most, his friend was broken on a deep level. Something that he and Akeno were unable to fix. In most cases, the mother was the first person a male child ever interacted with. Additionally, Naruto's initial interactions with people in the fairer sex had been detrimental on all fronts. Even now, his friend is still plagued by the shock of being rejected by his own mother. And this was the covert cause of Naruto's extreme uneasiness around people, particularly women. The boy was terrified of being betrayed once more. Nagato felt a little sad for both of his pals. Seeing Naruto suffer every day and Akeno falling deeply in love with such a man. Since he was not as strong as Naruto or as perceptive and intelligent as Akeno, this sense of helplessness always made him feel ashamed. How could he assist his friends? His life would be in jeopardy because of Naruto's plan to change the world, but his friend didn't care because he thought no one would really miss him after he passed away. Naruto was steadfast in his convictions, even though it was wrong on all counts. There was no reason for him to think otherwise. Nagato would follow Naruto all the way to the end if he really did follow this path, whatever the case. However, his friend was entitled to better. Akeno was worthy of better. As he gave Naruto a brotherly embrace, he was unsure of what was going through his mind. Even though his friend stiffened a little in surprise at this move, Naruto was still able to put a tentative hand on Nagato's back. Nagato assured him, "Don't worry about it, we'll get through all of this." With a smile on his lips, Nagato thought to himself, "If my intuition is correct, then they love you, Naruto. Someday I will reunite you with your family." For the first time, He had something to fight for. He would help them achieve their goals in addition to being a friend of Akeno and aiding Naruto in his quest. Nagato had a dream about the two of them. They belonged to his family. Just thinking about it made him happy and determined to complete this task no matter what happened, whatever the challenge that stood in his way. "Thank you, Nagato," Naruto said appreciatively, his voice genuinely soft for once. "Now, tell me what happened with this hunter ninja?" Nagato asked gravely, attempting to refocus the conversation so that neither of them would feel awkward following the sudden emotional outburst. Naruto stifled a flinch inside. This unpleasant sensation in his stomach initially prevented him from speaking the truth. His friend would not be happy with this new alliance, especially after Kisame almost killed him and Akeno, but he had no doubt that Nagato would stand by him. And if Akeno ever found out, which she most certainly would because of her domineering demeanor and Nagato's wish to spare her feelings. No, he had chosen to form an alliance with Kisame alone. He was accountable for this. He alone was willing to assume the risk of this alliance. He didn't want his friends to be concerned about a covert ally who might betray them at any time. Akeno and Nagato lacked the determination to deal with this pressure on a daily basis. In addition, he intended Kisame to be his covert trump card, only to be exposed in the most disastrous circumstances. It was finished. He didn't want his friends to know for their own protection. In the event that circumstances change, he would consider other options. However, until he found a safe haven for his friends and the Uzumaki children, he needed to keep this a secret for the time being. He told himself, one step at a time, Naruto. He looked at Nagato grimly a moment later. He detested lying like this, but for the time being, it was the best option, so he was pleased when his friend nodded weakly. Nagato nodded and said, "Well, I'm just glad you survived. We'll get him next time." "We will," Naruto declared with assurance as his friend winked and shoved him in the direction of their cave. Taunted Nagato, saying, "You shouldn't keep a lady waiting, especially when it's Akeno," and laughed when he heard Naruto mumble, "Traitor," as he headed for their hiding place. For the next few moments, Nagato kept laughing while he kept picturing the hell Naruto would have to endure. In fact, it made him feel sorry for his friend. Akeno had been in excruciating pain for the last few hours. She had suffered from a heart attack since she regained consciousness in time to see Naruto's clone vanish, indicating that Naruto was not with her. She recalled his plea to look after Nagato, his frantic cry as the hunter ninja's sword swung toward her. The sound, the flash that flashed before her. As she recalled his fleeing hiss as Kisame's sword ripped through Naruto's eye and down to his shoulder, her heart kept breaking. Seeing his blood erupt in a strong shower was a horrifying sight. Being unable to do anything for the person she loved made her feel more powerless than she had ever felt in her life. She would never wish such a curse on even her most ardent adversaries, to watch him obliterate his body to protect her life. When she had screamed in front of Nagato about Naruto's careless choice and the complete hatred she harbored for Kisame, she was filled with pure hot rage. She would kill that bastard for harming Naruto, no matter how long it took. He would cover the cost. But beneath all of the rage that was simmering inside her, there was desperation and fear. A world without Naruto was unthinkable to her. Despite everything, he was a self-centered jerk, his desire for revenge terrified her, and his dreams were so big that they made her feel insignificant. He was good. She had seen the regret and sadness in his eyes for not saving the Uzumaki, but Nagato and she had always seen him take the initiative and lead them forward. For allowing her to be taken prisoner, for failing to save numerous survivors who had been killed by those vile Konoha Anbu. But he was prepared to die for her in spite of everything. For her to live, he allowed all his dreams to fade away. She had come to a significant realization. She had no right to force her feelings on him. She was disgusted by the idea of what she was doing to him. Naruto was attempting to come to terms with the loss of his village, clan, and allies, just like the others. She couldn't even begin to imagine the pressure he must be under as he worked to provide them all with a future. Nagato was much superior to her in this regard. Nagato loved his friends, but he lacked determination. Without anticipating anything in return, he was prepared to accompany Naruto all the way to the gates of hell. He wouldn't even think twice about dying for his pals. Probably the most devoted person she had ever had the honor of knowing, he was so pure, and for that, she admired him. She fervently hoped Kami would save Naruto and allow him to return to them unharmed. It would be the happiest day of her life if he ever reciprocated her feelings, so she was resolved never to put too much pressure on him. And since he had the right to decide his own destiny, she would also accept that if he didn't, he had his freedom. Akeno stopped. As he stepped into the cave and stopped himself, It felt as though time had stopped for her. He expected her to lash out at him, so when their eyes locked and she saw him flinch, she felt bad. And he was correct, because she would have done that very thing if she hadn't realized her error. She was rendered speechless by the shocking realization that his lost eye had completely healed. The majority of his wounds had healed, but his clothing was ripped. Unbearable tension pervaded the air as he tentatively approached her. He watched her let out a horrified gasp, then there was blackness. Slowly, Naruto's eyes opened. The gloomy rocky cave's structure caught his attention right away, and the chilly air made him shudder. He could feel the comfort of the bed beneath his back and wondered where and when Nagato had gotten such a thing. He tried to raise his right hand, but it was blocked, so he blinked the last of the sleep from his sleep-deprived eyes. At that moment, he experienced the cozy warmth and the light pressure on his left side. He heard faint breaths on his chest, and one of his legs had entangled with someone else's. A genuine smile appeared on his lips for the first time. When he saw Akeno wrapped tightly next to him, her warm, soft body giving him the necessary protection from the cold, his bewildered expression changed to one of affection. Naruto was shocked to discover that his own left hand was holding her close to him as her long silver hair cascaded over her face and his chest. Uncertain of what to do, he stayed motionless. She appeared to be in deep sleep, as evidenced by her steady breathing, and he would be damned if he woke her up. Calm. He took a deep breath, feeling so exhausted that he managed to make Akeno smile a little as his chest rose, lifting her a little higher. Even as he mimicked the smile on her lips, Naruto thought incredulously, this girl. His mind strayed to the discussion he had with Nagato prior to his collapse. With all the fighting, healing, and running, he had almost depleted his chakra reserves, and I suppose even his body had its limits. He enjoyed the sensation of Akeno's smooth body as he pressed her a little closer to him. She was maturing and gradually changing from a teenage girl to a woman. She was probably the most beautiful girl he had ever seen in his life, he realized as he stared at her. And she would become even more magnificent over time. He pondered her declaration of love for him while stroking a few of her sleek silver hairs, in addition to Nagato's recommendation. He had never felt the need for a life partner, to be honest. He certainly needed friends, but anything more. He didn't even think he was deserving of her, or any woman for that matter, so he was still baffled by what she saw in him. What the hell was going through his head? If only he could figure it out. Any other person his age would be ecstatic about the prospect of falling in love with such a beautiful woman, but he just felt empty. Though he had no idea, he secretly felt bad for torturing Akeno in this way. She was also very pushy. Her biggest mistake was that he had initially been shocked and flattered by her constant communication of her intentions, but she simply didn't know when to stop or give him some space. But Uzu had been a mess ever since he was destroyed. Since both of his friends were coping with their own emotional issues, he deliberately kept them from seeing it. He needed to be strong and put on a calming front because of this. There was no other option, even though he didn't want to be a leader. His friends and the children who were still alive naively thought that he would guide them to safety and that things would return to normal. However, what about him? What ought he to do next? He should take them where? What dangers would such a choice entail? What would happen if they were caught? What if he encountered a stronger opponent than Kisame? Naruto was unable to endure seeing any more of his people perish. It would be more merciful to fall in combat than to endure that suffering. All of that, however, was of secondary importance to Akeno. Because he didn't want to offend her, he had been patient and made an effort to reason with her. All that mattered to her was that he returned her feelings. However, he just wasn't, and maybe would never be, ready for such a relationship. He was grateful that he passed out before their conversation started because he was already tense and didn't have much patience for her outbursts or comments. He was afraid that in his rage, he would say something hurtful that would break their friendship and cause her great pain. If only this foolish girl realized how much she meant to him. Their significance could be understood without romantic love. The only thing keeping him from going completely dark was the friendship he shared with her and Nagato. His concern for their safety and their opinion of him and his behavior prevented him from acting immorally. He didn't think he would have the time, energy, or desire to deal with this problem anytime soon because he had so much to do and achieve. He needed to maintain his concentration. He was in charge of all the kids who were soundly sleeping in various parts of the cave, nestled up against their friends, not just Akeno and Nagato. The parents and relatives of these children had trusted him with their care, and this duty was more significant than any desire for vengeance or sentimentality. He had to uphold the Uzumaki clan's legacy. These areas were no longer secure because Konoha and Suna would inevitably go to war. He had to devise a plan immediately, or else he would be at risk of another ambush by any of the sides. He made a shadow clone and planted a gentle kiss on Akino's forehead, causing her to sigh happily. He nodded and swapped himself out for the clone, who appeared delighted to stand next to the girl with the silver hair. Naruto walked outside after giving his clone a warning glare that caused his copy to roll his eyes slightly. He had to think. Both of his friends were waiting for him when he got back. Because the real Nagato was still on patrol around the perimeter's edge, his friend had sent a clone. They were never going to drop their defenses and run the risk of being killed or taken prisoner again. It was unexpected that Akeno was standing in a corner and appeared, for once, to be quite reserved. When the silver-haired girl woke up, she didn't say anything. Instead, she just went into another area of the cave to do something. Naruto had been given the memory of his dispelled clone. It was odd because Naruto had assumed that she would destroy his clone simply because she was angry with him. He saw her glance at him, and she flinched when she saw his calm, flat gaze. At last, he had made the decision to put Akino's feelings out of his mind for the time being. Addressing the feelings of a girl who was in love was not the most important thing to do. He was aware that it was cold, even cruel. However, he had a duty and would see to it that it was carried out. Perhaps ignoring her would help to end her erroneous feelings for him. If not, he would handle the matter when the time was right. He nevertheless made the decision to express his position to his friend. It was time to show their loyalty to him since they had selected him to be their leader. Without holding back, Naruto declared, "We are leaving Fire Nation." Naruto smiled as Nagato eagerly asked, "Thought as much. Things are getting tense with the upcoming war with Suna. What do you have in mind?" He was relieved that his friend shared his desire to leave this miserable country and its repulsive citizens. When Nagato merely shrugged, Akeno gasped in surprise and said, "Now. Wait just a moment. Are you guys insane? Do we really have to make such a move so recklessly?" She shivered when she turned to face Naruto. "I don't have to explain the gravity of the situation to you, Akeno. If you use your talents on more pressing matters then you would have easily seen the dire situation we are in," replied Naruto sternly. It took all of his willpower to keep from flinching. Akeno gazed at him, and it was clear from the expression in her eyes that she had just been slapped hard. The ball was in Akeno's court, and even though Nagato's eyes were a little wide, he chose not to comment and exacerbate the situation. She was still in shock and trying to think of a way to respond when Naruto saw her trying to process the harsh comment. She wasn't sure he had steeled himself and looked at her with the shinobi's professional, not a friend's, eyes. "You are a ninja of Uzu like us. Our only duty is to protect the children left alive. That's the mission," laughed Naruto. "You." Akeno stammered. With a clear meaning behind his cryptic words, Naruto proposed, "The mission is all that should matter, nothing more. And as team leader I expect to have your support in this." When Akeno gave the two boys a disillusioned look, Nagato closed his eyes. When she straightened up and formally saluted him, Naruto stifled a flinch. Her eyes had lost all playfulness and hesitation, and she was staring at him without expression. He was unsure of the reason behind the lump that was growing in his throat and the aching pain in his heart that he felt when he saw the expression in her eye. "Professionally," Akeno said, "order acknowledged. Is there anything else?" "Dismissed," was Naruto's whisper as she strode past him. Nagato stared at his friend's slumped shoulders until he was certain Akeno was out of earshot. Naruto's eyes were even more worn out than they had been after his run-in with Kisame. "You sure about this, Naruto?" Nagato inquired hesitantly. "Yes. She's too emotional, Nagato. You didn't see her almost dying on the mission just because she couldn't control her emotions for me. Her focus on me is quite unhealthy and she needs to be reminded of our priorities. I am willing to bear her hatred if it means she performs her duty and continues to survive. That's all that matters to me," bluntly stated Naruto. With a heated tone, Nagato asked, "Since when did simply surviving become more important than living?" He later regretted asking the question as the cave's temperature dropped a few degrees. Nagato could see the pain in his friend's eyes even though Naruto was glaring at him. "It became important when we lost our village, when we lost our people, when we were betrayed by everyone, when the last of our people are still being hunted down like cattle. I can't afford to fail anymore. All my life I devoted myself to our nation and our people. Their well-being and survival is my reason for existence, and I've already failed my mission twice. I can't make that mistake again, I won't," fiercely promised Naruto. "Maybe you did the right thing as our team leader, but as a person, do you honestly think what you did to Akeno was right?" Nagato patiently inquired. Naruto flatly responded, "My personal feelings are worthless and unimportant." What disturbed Nagato more was that Naruto genuinely held that belief. Nagato angrily said, "You're stupid," and his friend gave him a cold glare. From the beginning of my life, what I think, what I feel has never mattered or been considered. My path was chosen the day when my own parents gave me up. The only reason I lived till this day was because the Uzumaki gave me a mission to believe in and fight for. The mission is to serve my nation and protect my people, and I won't let anything interfere with that. Not even Akano or you. Fiercely promised Naruto. Nagato reluctantly said, Naruto, you do know that it's nearly impossible for us to rebuild our village? And for the first time he noticed the desire in Naruto's eyes. Despite the hardships he faced as a result of it, his friend had a deep love for their country. With his pent-up rage gone, Naruto muttered, I know, Nagato. Yet I've still heard you say that you will reform Uzu and restore our clan's position of power in this world? Yes. How? Naruto inhaled deeply and controlled his emotions in response to that question. Since Nagato was his closest and most trusted ally, his support for this plan was essential. Naruto asked sternly, can you swear your loyalty as a ninja to a foreign nation? And was not shocked by the scowl he got in return. What? Nagato hissed, and take charge of our clan, inquiring, Naruto. The fact that his friend was asking him to lead not just a small team but an entire clan was completely insane, and Nagato retreated a few steps because words could not express how shocked he was at the moment. Naruto, what the devil are you doing? Now I want the truth, Nagato, displaying his aggression for the first time, said angrily. As Nagato's eyes moved to the ninja world map that they had positioned in one of the cave's corners, Naruto simply replied, a megacure. Small Omegakure, which was surrounded by 3 large villages on landlocked borders, appeared insignificant compared to the once great Uzu, but Nagato could tell that Naruto had a very different viewpoint from his because of the way his friend was gazing at that little plot of land. Nagato, what do you see? Nagato's initial shock was lessened by Naruto's patient gaze as he asked inquisitively. Not much, was Nagato's candid response. Finally exposing a small positive aspect of his ambitious plan, Naruto admitted, that nation is not just the future of our clan but of the new world order I want to establish. Nagato simply raised an inquisitive eyebrow at that but nodded for his friend to go on. Although it is small, Konoha, Suna, and Iwa are the 3 large villages that have caused it to suffer during the last 2 wars. Under Salamander Hanzo's direction, it has gradually grown stronger over the past 20 years. I'm sure you've heard about him. Naruto asked, receiving another nod from his companion. Obviously, he defeated and seized the samurai nation on his own 7 years ago, Nagato stated bluntly. What other information about that man and his country do you know? Naruto asked, causing his friend to scowl a little as he put a finger to his chin and assumed a contemplative position. To be honest, not much. Although AIM is a highly protected country, based on what I've read, its shinobi are not as skilled or powerful as Hanzo's. That village has a good amount of natural resources and was able to establish a self-sufficient economy thanks to the annexation of Land of Iron. The 3 great villages have also attempted to halt the development of this country, but Hanzo has been able to thwart their evil plans, Nagato explained in detail. True. However, even a man like Hanzo is aware that his country would be destroyed if those 3 came together. He would have been alarmed by the devastation of our own nation and would have sought to strengthen his defenses in every manner he could. Hanzo's country lacks the unique ninja clan powers that Iwa, Konoha, and Suna possess, despite his own strength and a respectable army. Even though we might not have the numbers, our expertise in the sealing arts and other ninja skills could be of great assistance to him if the Uzumaki came to his aid. Furthermore, AIM's standing in the world would be improved since he would formally have an old, noble clan swearing allegiance to his country. Meaning more business for his country, Naruto said gravely. The plan was dangerous and relied on many unknown factors and possibilities, but Nagato could see the promise of success behind it all. He stared at his friend, who waited impassively for him to express his thoughts, and for a moment he felt both awed and afraid of Naruto. His friend was a clever and visionary fox who knew how to achieve his dreams. Nagato now realized why the Uzumaki had entrusted Naruto with the future of their clan. With him at their side, they had a chance to not only survive these difficult times but also to regain their former glory. The clan that backed Hanzo will also rise if he does. If we play our cards right, the Uzumaki family, like the Uchiha and Senju of Konoha, would take control of AIM. But we'll have to swear allegiance to someone else. Nagato asked hesitantly because, as an Uzu soldier, he felt that this plan, no matter how advantageous, was a little off. Akano, you, and the other members of our clan will need to do this. This is the only way to bring back the glory of our clan. Nagato asked Naruto courteously. How about you? With hesitation, Nagato asked, and his friend gave him a gloomy smile. Nagato, my other goals will interfere. I can't promise my allegiance to anyone else, anyway. I will serve as Uzu's final soldier for the rest of my life, Naruto declared with pride. Is there anything I can say to convince you otherwise? Nagato asked wearily, and Naruto grinned triumphantly. Nope. You're saying that I should lead our clan? Nagato inquired anxiously. Nagato smiled weakly back at Naruto, who put a hand on the young redhead's shoulder and smiled proudly at his friend. Nagato, you have a good heart. Even though I'm talented, our people can't freely confide in me about their issues, but you care about them just as much as I do. As a soldier, I will keep them safe from the shadows, but you and Akeno are the ones who need to win Hanzo's and his country's trust in our clan. The Uzumaki will only then be able to regain everything they have lost, Naruto calmly explained. Nagato muttered, I'm not good enough, as Naruto unexpectedly touched his friend's head. Nagato, you are going to save our clan. In all honesty, Naruto said, I know you can do it. Nagato shed a single tear as he gazed into his friend's bright, self-assured eyes. Throughout his life, no one had ever trusted him with anything significant. His own parents had adored him but had never thought he was capable of greatness. Even in the academy, he felt overshadowed by Akeno and Naruto, and even after Uzu's fall, he continued to feel worthless for being weak. But looking into Naruto's proud eyes made Nagato think that maybe, just maybe, he could live up to everyone's expectations, and if he became leader and became close to Hanzo, he could gain more support for whatever revolution Naruto wanted to bring in this world. And here was someone who was willing to believe in him despite all his flaws, even going so far as to make him the future leader of their clan. An honor Nagato didn't think he deserved. Naruto vowed, I'll support you in every way I can, Nagato. You. Nagato muttered, still in disbelief over what he had just heard. Will you allow me a moment to reflect? Nagato asked slowly, and his friend nodded. Obviously. By the end of the week, I want to take everyone to aim, and I'm sure you'll make up your mind by then. And whatever occurs or whatever choice you make, I have faith in you. Nagato, Naruto declared with pride. Naruto gave his friend one final encouraging grin before turning to leave to see how the kids were doing. Despite his inability to accept it, he knew that his future was with the Akatsuki. He was aware that Nagato and Akeno had other aspirations and were essential to the Uzumaki clan, even though they were willing to follow him out of pure goodness. This way, at least. I take it that this is farewell? When Naruto heard his friend's voice, his eyes widened and he hesitated before turning around to see Nagato grinning at him with a kind but melancholy expression. Nagato. You realize that you're a terrible villain? Nagato calmly reprimanded him while his friend continued to look at him in disbelief. Nagato knowingly said, making me the clan leader, deliberately pushing Akeno away in the name of the mission. Still trying to protect us. And was unsurprised when Naruto turned away, his fists clenched. Naruto hissed icily, attempting to block out his friend's intense gaze, you assume too much. You aren't getting rid of us so easily. Darkness or light, the three of us swore to have each other's backs. We made a promise, and I won't let you break it, cautioned Nagato. You. Naruto said in a startled tone, despite Nagato's arrogant grin. Besides, I can tell my lackey to do anything I want as clan leader, can't I? Nagato asked cheekily, his friend's eyebrows twitching. Lackey? Naruto grinned even more as he hissed in frustration. Nagato Uzumaki commands you minion. A kunai sailed overhead, forcing the redhead to duck, and he was startled when he glanced at Naruto, whose eyebrows were twitching wildly. Nagato merely feigned to dust off the fictitious dirt from his shoulders. That's it. Naruto screamed angrily, outside the cave. Akeno had been complaining quietly. How dare that dumb Naruto treat her with such disrespect? Did Kisame lose his sense of common sense? She couldn't decide whether to slap the boy repeatedly on the head, be angry with him, or just feel sorry for him. It was safe to say that she was constantly being driven crazy by Naruto Uzumaki. But isn't that what you like about him? Shut up. Despite her initial anger and hurt, she could see that something had affected Naruto. Something must have happened on the mission, which is why he was purposefully pushing her away. She sighed as her own two imaginary sides continued to quarrel inside her head. Naruto was as annoying and challenging to deal with as usual. And Kami was terrible at that. That idiot was in for a nasty surprise if he believed that such pathetic attempts would drive her away. The three of them had been through a lot. Despite their differences, Nagato had insisted that they must remain together, and Akeno reluctantly agreed with her friend. In a way, she was thankful to Nagato because he kept their team together and acted as a mediator between his friends. His calm demeanor allowed Naruto and her to tolerate one another and grow close. She was taken aback when the same Nagato frantically ran out of the cave, followed by a string of kunai and tiny water bullets from a furious Naruto who was pursuing his friend. And it made her smile in spite of everything. While a gloomy cloud hung over the boys' heads, Nagato simply shrank to the ground as Naruto continued to reprimand him on something only Kami knew. She watched with affection as Naruto finally caught his friend and gave him a few bumps on the head. However, seeing them remain united in the face of adversity gave her hope. She couldn't give up on either of her friends so quickly. They would support one another and stick together no matter what the future held. It was also a pledge. After a week, the Uzumaki were now on the Omegakure nation's borders. Known as the nation that would always be afflicted by rain, Omegakure was upholding its reputation for mystery and individuality thus far. To Naruto, at least. Now perched on top of Akino's biggest vulture summon, the shinobi kept a close eye on the little town below. Akino and Nagato stood next to him, while the anxious Uzumaki kids huddled behind them. Only the final 3 Uzu soldiers remained to decide their fates. Nagato noticed the faint frown on Naruto's face as he watched his leader briefly close his eyes. Akino noticed that even Nagato was beginning to focus, so she asked, "What is it?" She wasn't as adept at sensing from such a distance as the boys were. Both boys nodded grimly, which aggravated her even more because they had yet to respond to her question, which was causing her anxiety. With a bitter admission, Naruto said, "It seems I underestimated this nation. This is the nearest border town, yet there are several squads of strong shinobi here, not to mention," mysteriously replied Nagato. "I don't understand. Since when does a border town start getting this heavy force for protection?" Akino was perplexed. She noticed that Naruto was staring at the little mountain range a few kilometers from the town. Even though Akino was unable to see or feel anything there, Naruto's whole focus was on it, so it must have some significance. Naruto made his friends tense by saying, "Guess our bad luck never ends. Nagato, prepare for battle." Nagato hesitantly asked, "Are you sure?" as his hands moved in the direction of his tanto. "We've already been detected. Running now will only complicate things, not to mention destroy any chance of us ever finding a place in aim. We have to fight," said Naruto. Akino hissed, "Can somebody tell me what the hell is going?" Akino was afraid, but she was unable to express it aloud. She had only seen that expression on Naruto's face a few times, and each time was terrible. After Uzu's fall, Kisame followed, and now. When she opened her mouth to object, Naruto sternly said, "I don't have time to explain right now, Akino. I want you to stay here and protect the children. Under no circumstances are you to intervene." He then raised his hand. Naruto pointed to the anxious kids who were clinging to one another and said, "I am the team leader and you will obey my order. If nothing else, then at least trust me for their sake." That was effective because Akino's defiance significantly decreased. She moved forward and gave her 2 friends a big embrace. The boys smiled slightly when Akino whispered, "Be careful." After separating, Nagato and Naruto moved in the direction of the edge. Since they were all at least a few thousand feet in the air and it was impossible to bring the bird down, Akino saw Nagato turn to face his leader, who recognized his clear dilemma. Naruto cheekily said, "Hold on to me, Nagato," and took his friend's hand. "Why do I get the feeling I won't like tea?" In the midst of the dark night and the bright moon in the sky, Akino and the Uzumaki children gasped in shock and wonder as both boys changed into dense, dark smoke. As though to make sure they were safe, the smoke quickly made one final lap around the bird before plummeting to the ground at an incredible rate. It was obvious that it was similar to Shunshin, but she had never seen anything like it. Since Naruto kept his dark abilities a secret, it was obvious that he was more powerful than both her and Nagato. However, to believe that he and a passenger could execute a Shunshin at such a height and distance. Even so, she couldn't help but smile as she thought about how Nagato would react to this little thrill ride. In a graceful motion, Nagato spread out on the damp ground and immediately threw up on the muddy patch of land. With a puzzled smile on his face, he glared at the boy next to him who was witnessing this humiliation. Nagato coughed a little and said, "What the fuck was that?" "Tell you what, if we survive this I may just tell you all about this technique," said Naruto. Nagato hissed, "If," and his insane best friend gave him a little laugh. Calmly, Naruto said, "Watch my back, Nagato," as the other boy approached from behind. Nagato muttered, "As if I have a choice," but still pulled out his weapon and began looking around. He understood that Naruto had brought them directly into the town, but they were met with an odd sight rather than the faces of frightened bystanders. Even though there was no sign of life in the entire town, Nagato could sense the glimmering sources of energy lurking in the darkness. With a challenge, Naruto uttered, "I count 90. Nagato asked gravely, "What do we do about the ones present on the mountain?" "If my guess is right, then we have to reach them. If we are to become a part of AIM, then we need to do it legally with the permission of its ruler. Sneaking into the country like spies and hiding won't work for long," whispered Naruto, causing Nagato to Nagato exclaimed in surprise, "You brought us here on purpose?" Naruto lowered his head with the grace to appear somewhat embarrassed. Although he trusted Naruto with his life, Nagato was growing irritated with his friend's secrecy and tendency to keep almost everything hidden, even from his closest friends. Nagato said wearily, "This isn't a town, is it?" "No, it is an AIM frontier. Now that war between the two great villages is certain, I, as the home of a small garrison force, had learned that Hanzo was examining the frontiers that AIM shares with Konoha and Suna," Naruto reluctantly admitted. Nagato's head snapped toward the mountains as a terrible feeling began to grow inside of him. This was not a chance meeting, but rather a prearranged conflict his friend had decided to fight against Hanzo and his men. "Naruto, if we make it through this, then we're going to have more than a few words," Nagato swore as he positioned himself behind Naruto. While Kisame had maintained that the information was accurate and that Hanzo would never permit the Uzumaki to join his village until he witnessed their strength in combat and their proficiency in various ninja arts, Naruto was thankful that his friend had not inquired about the source of the information. For this reason, Naruto had come here with Nagato. His friend was a skilled warrior who was proficient in ninjutsu and fuinjutsu. Hanzo must have sensed Akino's summons in the air, and since she was a medic, he couldn't afford to risk her life so carelessly, nor could he trust that she wouldn't lose her temper after discovering the truth about this encounter. In any case, Nagato was at least old enough to control his temper for the time being and concentrate on the more crucial task. Although Naruto was aware that this was a risky situation and that he would ensure Nagato and his people were safe if something went wrong, he knew deep down that this was the only way. He doubted that his friends would have believed him, much less come here, if he had told them about this feeling, but Naruto was already at a loss for options, and this was the only way in his mind. Later he would face the repercussions. Looking back, Nagato suppressed a gasp at the sight of something that would haunt him for many nights as the figures stepped out of the shadows, and he shuddered not because of the sheer number of ninjas surrounding them, but rather because of something sinister being born. A long dark cloak composed of that evil energy covered Naruto's back, and waves upon waves of pure dark chakra floated around him like flames rising from fire. However, it was those eyes that frightened Nagato. The boy's teeth began to sharpen like a fox's, and dark whisker lines covered his friend's cheeks, while Naruto's once pure blue eyes turned blood red and slitted, giving him the appearance of a humanoid fox-like creature. They were all burdened by the sense of death, murder, misery, and most of all, anguish and sorrow. Is this the dark side's power? As Naruto gestured to the now shivering AIM ninjas, Nagato thought in terror. "I'll try not to kill you." Two people stood in the distant mountains, a few miles from the border town of AIM, watching the pivotal battle that was about to occur in their homeland. For them, it was a historic moment because it might be the beginning of AIM's participation in the Third Great Ninja War, but it was also vital to AIM's survival. One of the individuals was a tall, bald man with a wavy mustache and a deep scar that ran from his left eye to the middle of his cheek. He was dressed in traditional gray samurai armor, and a fine sword was strapped to his waist. His dark eyes briefly widened as the wave of evil energy passed over him. Standing next to him was a tall young woman with long, gorgeous blonde hair that reached deep up to her waist, silvery eyes that were also focused on the town, and a small smirk on her face. She was wearing a light blue t-shirt and a short skirt, and her dark black armor was covered by the symbol of a mysterious clan that no one in AIM knew anything about except its leader. "Interesting," the woman murmured. The woman scowled as the bald man remarked, "The force is unbelievably strong in this child. How many times do I have to explain that it's called chakra, Mifune? Samurai like you never learn, do you?" With a slight smile on his face, the man named Mifune asked the woman impatiently. "Galatea, come now. When the terms have the same meaning, what difference do they make?" Mifune suggested that people should respect one another and their cultures. "All right." But when Mifune remained stoic, Galatea sighed and said bluntly, "But you owe me an explanation as to where you got the information that such shady people were going to infiltrate our nation." When he noticed the slight fear in his partner's eyes, the samurai became a little concerned because, in addition to being one of the world's best censors, Galatea possessed a special power that only her apprentice had partially mastered. He knew that if Galatea really wanted to end this battle, there was nothing anyone could do to stop her, but there were much more important games going on, and the fact that even Galatea appeared a little shaken only served to highlight how dangerous their opponent was. Galatea. Both warriors turned to bow before the man in front of them, but Mifune froze, still trembling occasionally from the hoarse voice and the sound of footsteps behind them. Hanzo Salamander. It was hard to believe that the leader of AIM had such humble tastes. The revolutionary leader stood in front of them, dressed simply in blue pants and a gray shirt, with a dark blue cloak floating behind him and a breathing mask covering his face. His long, dirty blonde hair was flowing in the air, and his hard, dark eyes were watching his top commanders. Hanzo not only restored the shattered AIM but also offered the weary samurai a way to peace. His people had not readily submitted to him, and it was only after a brutal conflict that the samurai formed an alliance with him. Mifune remained thankful for having discovered such a visionary leader. A world of true peace. The fact that Hanzo prohibited his ninjas from ever engaging in murder or assassination missions and only allowed his warriors to protect merchants, villages from bandits, and other noble occupations undoubtedly decreased AIM's income, but the samurai were more than willing to compensate for the losses by lending this country their resources and financial might. In the ninja world, there was a long-standing myth that AIM had seized the samurai nation, but in reality, the two countries were cooperating to achieve their shared goal and would not allow anything or anyone to interfere. Hanzo had chosen to crush these miscreants in order to demonstrate that, in contrast to the previous two great ninja wars, neither AIM nor the samurai nation would put up with the tyranny of the great nations and its shinobi. This was because they had heard from an unidentified source that a shadowy group of people would be trying to infiltrate AIM. Hanzo's hard eyes were fixed on Galatea, waiting for a response. There are roughly 60 of them, the majority of whom are kids. Galatea, with her eyes still closed, reported, but they are staying far away from the battle, and I can sense a kunoichi keeping those children safe on top of a flying creature high up in the sky. How about those in the community? As Hanzo merely absorbed the information, Mifune asked gravely. They are 2 in number. One of them is powerful, most likely a ninja at the Chunin level. They're both men, Galatea remarked hesitantly. What about the other? The one whose might permeates our territories? Hanzo asked gravely, causing the female ninja to wince. Galatea stammered back, I have never felt anything like this, Hanzo-sama. Unfazed by this monstrous power, AIM's leader calmly told Hanzo, speak freely, Galatea. AIM's leader was the perfect example of a composed individual who was patiently observing the events that were taking place in front of him. There is corruption in the other boy. Galatea said, I fear he may be very skilled in using the dark arts, but he is too strong with the dark side of chakra. There was a strange gleam in the leader's eyes as he felt this dark aura grow stronger and stronger with every second that went by, and Hanzo's lack of response caused his followers to stare at him quizzically. Hanzo said, puzzled, we live in interesting times. Mister? Uncertain of what her leader desired, Galatea asked. Galatea, you're right. Although this ninja has a strong dark side, I don't sense that he intends to murder or cause chaos. Mifune gaped at Hanzo as he said, it seems like he's inviting us to watch this battle. Then you mean? Yes, Mifune. It was no accident that you received the anonymous tip. These individuals chose to confront us despite the fact that there are multiple ways to enter our territories without warning. I have a suspicion about who these people might be, so either they are foolish or they have a plan, Hanzo stated sharply. Who? Galatea asked inquisitively as she noticed her leader's eyes harden. The Uzumaki. Mifune and Galatea exchanged shocked glances, neither of them realizing this, but the shrewd expression in their leader's seasoned eyes was enough to reveal that Hanzo knew more than he was admitting. Before returning to his country to start a revolution, Hanzo had traveled extensively throughout the world, and there were a lot of things he had seen, done, and experienced that were too complex for any of his supporters to comprehend. Hanzo-sama, what are your plans regarding them? Mifune inquired briefly. It seems the rumors about this clan's strength were not false after all, if they have such a dangerous ninja in their ranks, Hanzo said with integrity. Hanzo-sama, then. Galatea said with hope, a tiny smile appearing on her face before it was quickly smothered by the stern expression in her leader's eyes. If these people and this boy have survived so many adversities, there must be something exceptional about them. I will at least recognize their bravery and grant their request on equal footing if these individuals are able to overcome my finest soldiers and make it to this mountain, Hanzo said. However, they have no right to demand anything from me or this wonderful country if they are unable to even get here without my mercy or without defeating my soldiers using their own strength. If they make it here or are defeated in combat, everything will be decided. After saying those stern words, AIM's leader left two commanders in disbelief. What should we do, Mifune? Galatea questioned unsurely, and she noticed her partner sigh. Mifune told him, we have no choice but to follow Hanzo's will. Sadly, Galatea hinted, but because of this there will be unnecessary bloodshed on both sides, as she watched her partner gaze at the town. Hanzo might have insisted that these Uzumaki demonstrate their value and their right to fight to the death. As he turned to face his anxious female partner, Mifune thought proudly, if that's the case, then how relentless Hanzo's spirit is. He doesn't even allow his enemies to have half-hearted sense of values or victory. Then, all we can do is hope that these Uzumaki arrive here soon enough to avoid causing too much damage. Galatea gave Mifune a fleeting smile as she considered her apprentice, but she doubted that they could truly defeat Angel. I'm hoping so. What if this boy does, however, make it here? Galatea asked gravely, and as the samurai gazed at his long sword, a determined expression began to form in his eyes. The woman next to him nodded firmly when Mifune said, if that happens and they try to harm Hanzo, then we'll protect him with our lives. Understood. Naruto enjoyed the terrified expressions in the AIM ninja's eyes, and he knew that this fear and despair only made him more powerful against them. Kisame had only equaled his strength because he was fearless and had more ninja experience, and Naruto was certain that after a few years of training, there would be very few ninja who could actually compete with him on an equal footing. He looked at his friend with his red eyes, which only caused the boy to flinch, but he could have avoided feeling Nagato's fear. After a moment, Nagato nodded and steeled himself. Naruto grinned. Hundreds of kunai, shuriken, and exploding tags were thrown at them from all sides. These projectiles were even more deadly because they were powered by pure chakra, which doubled their speed of travel. Naruto responded by smiling and clasping his right hand. Even Nagato grinned when he saw the stunned expressions on the AIM ninjas' faces, and the entire attack was ruined as the weapons hit each other rather than their targets, obliterating them. It was well known that Naruto was much more vindictive and destructive when his dark powers were being openly used, so Nagato's smile vanished when he saw Naruto snarl in disappointment. Seeing his dangerous friend take a few steps forward only seemed to make Nagato more anxious. As soon as Nagato saw multiple umbrellas being flung into the air, the next attack began. Pathetic. Naruto muttered. Naruto lowered his raised hand and glared at the anxious AIM ninja, but the tension seemed to be unabated despite his eyes turning demonic red. The umbrellas collapsed and turned to dust before they could even open up completely. Is that your best option? Impatiently, Naruto asked. The sound of 5 young AIM ninjas charging at the dark ninja was accompanied by a few snarling cries, but Nagato flinched when he saw the icy expression in Naruto's eyes. His friend didn't even seem to care that these people were far from his power. Darkly, Naruto pointed his hand at the enraged shinobi that was approaching and said, I will never forget my people's pain. Doiryogen, Dark Illusions. A few seconds later, the other AIM ninja were appalled when their 5 comrades just stopped. Naruto felt himself entering the minds of these teenage warriors, feeling their raw anger at him for entering their country and openly insulting them. He attached himself to that anger and began to plant images in these vulnerable ninjas' minds. On Naruto's orders, the 5 AIM ninja knelt before him and aimed their swords at their own startled compatriots. Nagato shared the other AIM ninjas' astonishment. Who are you? AIM Chunin, a young adolescent girl, whispered, her eyes wide with terror. In order to answer that question, Naruto unleashed his puppet AIM ninjas on their former comrades, leaving Nagato to watch in horror as the AIM forces made a valiant attempt to stop their turned comrades without killing them. Throughout this entire ordeal, Naruto merely stood in his place, his dark eyes displaying a lack of interest. Nagato, if you want, kill them. I don't care, Naruto said absently. Nagato shakily replied, you don't mean that. Akano had warned him about the consequences of Naruto using his dark powers to this degree, but he had only just realized how drastically this power was changing his friend, as if Naruto were changing into something else entirely. Nagato tried to make sense of it, closely observing Naruto's twisted smile and the gleam in his narrowed eyes as he observed the mayhem he had wrought. Nagato caught a glimpse, but it was fleeting. Nagato had read that one particular beast possessed the craziness, bloodlust, anger, and deranged appearance. The Kyuubi. As a Jinchuriki of that evil fox, Kushina had indirectly inherited Naruto's powers from the ancient beast, and it appeared that Naruto had absorbed a small portion of that vile beast in his soul as well, which only surfaced when Naruto used his powers to such a great degree. A series of agonizing screams echoed through the entire town, interrupting Nagato's train of thought. Nagato looked down to see Naruto standing beneath these suffering people with a sick smile on his lips. Nearly 40 AIM ninjas, men and women who didn't even seem to have finished their adolescence, were hanging in the air, desperately grasping at their throats. Naruto said savagely, "Humans like you don't deserve to live." They never intended to kill AIM ninja, but it appeared that Naruto could not control himself, and before Nagato could stop him, the victims collapsed on the ground and began to gasp for air. Nagato screamed in horror as Naruto was about to clench his fist, breaking these struggling ninjas' necks. Even Naruto appeared taken aback, turning to face his equally taken aback companion. "What happened, Nagato?" inquired Naruto in confusion. When his friend's gaze shifted from him to something in the sky, the dark ninja scowled. The dark ninja froze in place as he turned around and saw a ninja he had never seen before standing high in the sky. The first thing he saw were the two large, elegant paper wings that allowed the kunoichi to hover above him. She was dressed in the AIM ninja's uniform, but unlike most of the ninja on the ground, she was wearing a Junin vest. She had a very fair complexion and a sharp feminine face, and her shoulder-length straight blue hair was flowing slowly in the cold weather. The white flower in her hair only added to her beauty, but what really captivated Naruto was the determined expression in her amber eyes. Naruto's breath caught in his throat as he looked at her face. One glance in those eyes was enough to demonstrate that this was a person equally steadfast in their convictions and resolved to do whatever it took to preserve what was important to them. The fire that burned in those eyes was intoxicating, calling him to flame like a moth. The name, Angel, was chanted by nearly all of the AIM ninja, who sighed with relief. Even Nagato was taken aback, not by the girl, but by the infinity of paper shuriken she had conjured up in the sky. So many that she had even prevented the moon from shining. "This is where it ends," warned the girl. Nagato did not miss the icy expression in Angel's eyes or the twisted gleam in Naruto's orbs, but he felt two great surges of power, one peaceful and calm, the other chaotic and twisted. When the two made their move, it seemed as though time had stopped for all the people in the area. The angel began to descend at Naruto with terrifying speed, accompanied by her army of paper weapons, which gave her the appearance of a powerful spear that was falling from the sky. In exchange, Naruto changed into dense, black smoke that at once resembled a dark human skull. Then he charged.
I will continue the story in next part. Till then, we weeb offline.